Hopefully this live is going all right. Oh, where is the live?
It popped us up on your thing.
You can see us now? Hey, everybody. Wow. Took a while for it to pop up that I could see it. Lauren, how you doing? Whitechel. Oh, I was going to go live at 1:30. I forgot about that. But I got, and I will be doing that soon. I'm going to start doing it at 1:30. But we had a plumbing problem here, and I got a plumber coming in, so I had to start now. Yeah. Anyways, Joe is in the house. Wow. So we were haven't talked in a while, Joe. We haven't talked about the firing and all that kind of
In
stuff.
about a week. Yeah, I was on, what was the last time? Last week, I believe, one of those days. And obviously that was pre-AV being let go, which, as somebody commented on my video, kind of when I made a video about AV, when coaches get let go, obviously, like Bruce Boudreau, who just got hired in Vancouver and Minnesota, it's not because necessarily you didn't have success, at least regular season based, or you didn't at one time have success like AV did in 1920. It just means you got stale at that. Everybody meets there in business, every leadership, whether it's hockey, another sport, or business in general, the voice sometimes gets stale. And it seemed like that's at the point of where the Flyers were coaching wise, but at the same time, we know there's more than just that. That, like Steele talked about when he was on there, that needs to be adjusted organizational wise as well. That is not just, oh, flip the switch with the code and everything will be better. There was finally a game that there was stuff to build on in Yo's first game. You still played shoddy defense, but I expected to play shoddy defense against Colorado. But at least you were able to get the goal total going for the first time since about the beginning of November. So you had some stuff to build on in the first game of the Yo era, but I think that game still proved it wasn't just AV that was not the main issue in just itself. It's like Giroux said, the players got to pull themselves up too, and everything kind of needs to shape itself up around the organization. Now, if Scott was the guy, like per reports, that did step in and say after that 7-1 loss, you need to do this now to Chuck Fletcher, I do give him props for that because I normally come at Dave Scott and say Comcast is one of the worst owners, if not the worst owner, other than the Pagulas in the NHL, and maybe also Melnick up in Ottawa. But if he did step in there, then sure, that was a good move by him because he actually did, like he's always accused of not having, does have a pulse on the fan base a little bit if he stepped in after the 7-1 loss because it seemed like Fletcher at that point would be the guy that doesn't have enough pulse into the fan base. Because if he even thought after Monday that they should have held on to AV a little bit, then he has a screw loose in that instance. He was too tight to AV. Like you said, that sometimes people can be a little, like we talked about before, sometimes certain GMs like Bergevin before the show can be too tight to their players. Fletcher seemed a little bit too tight to his code. That eventually it took a guy that never steps in to step in and say, look, you got to do this now if that actually is what happened. And there's been credible reports that said that is. So I think that also looks bad for Fletcher as a GM.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like it right from the get-go. So I came off as a whiner. I did some stuff with some Flyer nitty-gritty guys, and they didn't seem too happy with me. But
About AV or about Fletcher?
I didn't like the hiring of Fletcher. I didn't like the Hextall firing. I didn't like AV getting hired all that much. I didn't like any of it.
Well, the Hextall firing was weird because when Hextall got fired, I remember exactly when it happened because I woke up that morning, was doing some stuff, looked at my phone. I'm like, wait, Ron Hextall got fired. Because everybody was thinking Hextall would have got fired. At that, it was like, okay, Dave's going to get fired. He'll bring in a new coach. Everything will kind of move that way. And then Hextall gets fired. A new GM comes in, who's obviously Fletcher, who holds on to Hack for a little bit to see, kind of get a gauge on everything. And then he gets rid of Hextall. And then it starts the turn of the tide that eventually leads to AV with Gordon, of course, being an interim. But it was a weird structural way that happened, and that's also one of the reasons why I got on Dave Scott in the past, because you kind of looked at it and went, well, just because this guy has his own way doesn't mean you should stop his way of doing things if it looks like it might over time rebuild the farm system. Now, I'll give it to people. We haven't hit necessarily on the top round guys to be the next Giroux. I understand that, but the Flyers have in the Hextall era pick guys from covering the Phantoms that are those B minus, B plus, those guys that fit in well as pieces of the puzzle development potential, but they just need to find now the next guy that's going to take the mantle in that. I do agree with that. That's going to be the next Giroux of the organization, because I don't think that is Coots. Coots is a little bit more of a Ryan O'Reilly type player that those guys can take the mantle, but not in the same degree as you see like the G's in their prime who just have the skill like he showcased against Tampa to just go through an entire defense and say, screw you guys, we're not losing this game. Like the Zegras type young players, where the Flyers don't have that per se right now. Morgan Frost is, of course, up battling back from injury, but he's still, like Yo said, has the confidence tied, or when he gets something going, he looks great for 20 minutes, and then he has a little bit of a down lull in the game. So I think it's about finding that first round guy. It might even be this year if you keep going the same direction you're going in Lambert or somebody like that. But it's about finding that guy. I do like the middle round guys we have, but I think it was we gave up early on the Hextall experiment. I didn't mind bringing in Fletcher because I'm always one of everybody learns from their past experience, where Fletcher screwed up big time when it came to the expansion draft and screwed up big time when it came to certain contracts in Minnesota. But I thought, like, one, he didn't screw up big time here considering the expansion draft in my eyes. And two, I thought he would learn from the mistakes of Minnesota, where that is something we're still see going forward, because we obviously have Risto here. We'll see what type of contract he gets signed to compared to some of the contracts he signed in Mini. So that's kind of a wait to be seen type thing, because the moves that were made were more, I would put that also towards AV, because both of them met in the offseason to kind of have a consolidated group of, I want X, Y, and Z to be the type of players you bring in. So I think he had a good say in the moves we brought in this offseason, that I won't put that all on Fletcher. But obviously, your coach hanging on to him a bit longer, having to have an owner that's accused of never stepping in, that's not a good look for you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's the thing. They had a plan. It was a good plan, and they went against the plan. And now it looks like they just made what was going to be the plan even last longer. It seems to, but it's hard to say, because if you look at what Calgary is right now, you would have said the same thing about Calgary last year. And I don't know what's going on with my.
That's a good point.
Maybe
Yeah.
I don't want to reboot.
Well,
It doesn't matter. You guys
it's
really need to see me, really? Like, is that really a big
yeah, we
thing
don't.
with you to see me? Like, as long as you can hear me, that's all that matters, I guess. I don't know what's going on. Every time we do this, something happens. But um, the team needs to play with pace. Simple as that. I don't even care if
Yeah,
you make mistakes right now. You can't have your puck on your stick for more than 5 seconds if you're not skating. If you're standing there with
no,
the puck on your stick, you're making the mistake before you even get started. I'd rather you cough up the puck than stand there with the puck on the stick. Either you're
yeah.
skating with
Well,
the
you
puck
said
or you're passing the puck. There's no two options. That's what Calgary did. That's what
yeah. Well,
Sutter
you
said.
said it. You said exactly, and you said it yesterday when I was able to tune in a little bit while driving around when you and Steele were on. Hockey in the pros is a 2 second or less really make the decision sport. If you're in the ECHL, you can add a little bit more to that. If you're in the AHL, you can add a wee bit more to that. As you keep moving up a level, it's that much quicker of a split second decision. Where the Flyers have people, like, they move at a pace that's more of a lower level pace than an NHL pace, and that's not going to help you obviously at the NHL level. But also, I think Lauren did make a good point. Sometimes people do change, but the fashion in which they kind of think, but necessarily won't change. But I think Boudreaux kind of had a good quote for that when he got hired by Vancouver. he said he kind of managed his teams to the roster they had, where he's going to try to run the same type of push the pace system. But when he was in Anaheim compared to Minnesota, he said in Minnesota we didn't have as big of guys. We just had guys where I still wanted them to be in your face and push the pace that way and be in your face on defense, get the puck back and push it up. So, yeah, it's always the same style of thinking, but it's a different groove within that style of thinking for each team, for each coach, where Boudreaux with the Capitals, with the Ducks, or with the Wild thought differently in each group, just with the same type of thought process. But it was like, Getzlaff, I can have him fight or beat the crap out of somebody or check. Obviously, with the Wild, it was more, I'm going to have these guys kind of just get in your face like the Fialas of the world, and not as much, obviously, brute force as the Anaheim Ducks had. So it's a little bit different, and I think that's a good point by Lorne, where people kind of adjust more in a way inside their line of thinking, where it's not they adjust their whole line of thinking, they just adjust their style of thinking within that line for that individual club. Where that's why it'll be interesting to see who the Flyers decide to bring in. Where somebody that's interesting to follow, I think, is Hartford's head coach of the Wolfpack in the AHL that I know Steele's brought up, who was here when Hackstall was here, which is Chris Noblaw, the guy that was our power play guy when Dave was here, because our power play, one of the best things of the Hackstall era was the Flyers power play, which has been terrible since. So he's a guy that did really well with that. He had McDavid and others with the Erie Otters, and then moved on to be the assistant with us, and then moved on to now be the head coach of the Wolfpack, who are a very good AHL team, the Rangers affiliate. So if you can pull him out of the Rangers organization, if the Flyers are looking for an assistant, I could definitely see him being a guy they try to pull back, but I don't know if you can convince him to come out of an organization where he is an AHL head coach right now to be an assistant. So an outside of the box thing there would be, well, he's an offensive push the pace type coach that's great with the power play. Would you hire him as your head coach? And then maybe if Tocchet wants to be an assistant coach who's very good defensively, you then have Rick Tocchet say, this is just spitballing, but as your assistant coach, who's very good in the defensive end, and then you have an offensive mind, a defensive mind, and then you kind of fill in around that. That's an outside of the box possibility, because he definitely would be one of the better offensive minds on the market as an outside of the, not one guy that everyone's not necessarily throwing out there as much.
Well, I when it comes to what coaches to go for, I have to say I don't really, because there's just, look at the coaches coming in. I didn't know Larson was as good of a coach as he is. Like, I don't get to see the AHL and all that. That
Mm-hmm.
guy's doing incredible in Columbus right now. Uh, Turney and for the Coyotes, that team only needs skill. There is nothing wrong with the way they play. They are playing. Of course, it's a lot easier to get guys that know they're not skilled enough to do the little things, because it's the only way they're going to win, right? So, but the fact of the matter is, he's got them all on the same page. That team is not easy to beat, and I
No.
know Vegas did a number on him and stuff like that, but it's not like that score didn't really indicate how well Arizona played in that game. They played really well, considering the lineup that they have. So I don't know what's out there, but I imagine there's a lot more talent out there than we know. So, but I agree, an offensive. A guy that can help these guys play with pace would be very important. And and I also agree. And I don't know how any way to get this other than what I was talking about when Eichel was out there. I would have took the chance on him. Now I don't know if
Yeah,
it was an option, but for the package that Vegas gave up, I'm sure Philly could have come up with something.
yeah. There's also, of course, somebody that we've been rumored with before. Where when I was on with Chris, I talked about it. The Flyers, which Eichel's more of this type of guy too. It's not like Eichel will ever be accused of being a fantastic 200-foot player. He's not bad, but he's more offense than defense. If you get brought in, especially with how he's playing this year, hindsight's 2020 in every move. But if you brought in Johnny Gaudreau in the offseason rather than some of the other moves you made, how he's playing with Sutter this year. Now, would he have played the same way in Philly? That's a what if situation. But how he's playing in Sutter's system and with the Flames this year, no matter what his feelings are, whatever on the, it's working, and he seems like he's coming back to being the old Johnny, where the Flyers only need a push the pace offensive. If you're not great in the defensive zone, that's not a great shortcoming to have. But the Flyers have so many guys that are defense first and then offense in their system already that they don't necessarily need another one of those. They need a guy that can push the pace, get the assists right on the tape of someone like Atkinson or TK so they can pot their goals and get going, or somebody that can just shoot the damn puck and put it in himself, where Goudreau fits into that category while being a more aggressive shooter than a guy like Jake Voracek. He is a playmaker, but he's a guy that has the shot and uses it more effectively than someone like Jake, who would get overly passive at times, where this season you're not seeing that with Johnny Gaudreau, where he's actually using his shot when he should and passing it when he should, like he did a couple years ago, and not like he's been the last year he started getting it going again, but not like he's been in the COVID shortened season and the year prior to that when Flames fans started saying this isn't the same Gaudreau. You started seeing the same Gaudreau last year, and then that carried into this year where he was kind of back to the old Johnny hockey. So I feel like that move's kind of dead at this point with the way the Flames are this season. I don't know if they will move on. They might just let his contract go out and lose him for whatever they lose him for with the way they're going this year. But that's a move that you look back, hindsight's 2020. If you were able to actually bring him in, I think that definitely would have helped to push the pace and helped everybody kind of just follow by example because Goudreau is I talked about with Steele and Chris, there's a different level between elite and a very good all-star player. Goudreau at his best is at that elite, can kind of just put the team on his back level where other guys that the Flyers have are at that very good all-star level where they can be elite, but like Provy at his best this far has been more of an all-star level defenseman rather than a ridiculous all world like the Makars of the world.
Oh, he's
Where
nowhere near that.
uh,
No.
yeah, exactly. Where um when it comes to Coots, he's elite if he's having the great Selkie level season, but if he's playing more like this year, he's a limited elite class because he doesn't have the same offensive skill of a Sean Couturier because he has that great or of a Claude Giroux, I mean, because he has that great defensive ability that G doesn't have, being Couturier, being a Selkie winner. But it's kind of the Flyers need that more offensive. They don't need more of these Selkie-esque defensive Scott Laughton type guys that are good on both ends type players. They need a push the pace offensive guy, and if he's not the best defensively like Goudreau, that's fine. But also, I will point out Johnny Gaudreau's best defensive season arguably has been this season with Daryl Sutter, who's a guy that kind of gets anybody to buy in throughout his career on both ends, and it seems like that's even happened with Johnny Gaudreau.
I think Goudreau, I think basically, I believe the Philadelphia Flyers have not had the coaching to get the best out of their players so far. Hackstall didn't seem to be able to work it with the veterans. I don't think, I think Hackstall is going to be a great coach. I just don't think that was the spot for him to start. I like him better where he is in Seattle there now to grow into being a great coach like Hines is and DeBoer, what happened with New Jersey there. I was skeptical of AV when they hired him, and for the reasons that it was, I think the game sort of left AV by a little bit now. This game is all about pace and all about moving the puck fast and forgiving players for mistakes. Best teams, look at the best teams right now. Vegas, do you see those guys move the puck, man? It is
Oh
insane.
yeah,
They're not. They also have fast skaters too. Don't get me wrong, but they move the puck like so quick. It's
you don't
crazy.
need to be the quickest team though, because there's a difference between, and I think sometimes we get lost in the two words. There's a difference between speed and
Yeah,
pace. Pace is more
pace is
like
not about being the fastest skaters. It's about making quick thoughts, thinking quick
the
thinking.
quickest decisions.
Mhm.
Exactly, yeah, because Florida did that, and so did Philly when they had Yager in the late career, when you could not play speed wise when he was on your line because he was slow as molasses at that point. But he had skill and he was able to do a lot, so you still had the split second. He got the pass, it was right to Giroux, or he got the pass, it was right to Huberto. Like it was a right split second decision, but it wasn't speed. So they still played with the pace. They just didn't play with speed because you couldn't do it. Where the Flyers don't do either because, like you said, they get caught puck holding where you saw better pace and you saw better also speed even mixed into the lineup on Monday against Colorado in the 7-5 loss. If you can make offensive decision making like that a little bit better, you'll be better moving forward. Now you of course just need that was Jones's only awful game in Philly, and the defense was suspect again. You would need that to come up, but if you can play with the pace that we did compared to usual against an Avalanche team, then yeah, you would be in a better spot moving forward. And also the goalie we got 5 against. I understand he's a rookie, but he won the Rookie of the Month in the AHL and is coming off of being one of the hottest goaltenders in the minors. And had to get forced up a little bit earlier in his career than they would like. He's a pretty darn good goaltender, and they still put in 5 on him as a rookie there, and I thought he even played solid as getting in 5. It's just the Avalanche themselves didn't defend well either. They allowed way less shots. It was like half the shots, but just like they've been accused of this season, they're not the best defensive team. They're a very good offensive team. I mean, when you have Jack Johnson and what's his name as your top 6 defense, where Johnson was in the top 4, and then they had another guy. I can't remember who it is right now, but they consider that's in their top 6. That's more of a depth mix-in level defenseman this year due to injuries with Byram and others being out. That's going to affect your defense negatively, and we saw that with We've been seeing that with Colorado throughout the season. They've been winning more offensive base, similar to Edmonton
Well,
when they've won, than they have been
that's
defensive
mostly
base due to
because of
their
their
defense.
goaltending, though. Their goaltending's been really bad this year.
Well,
Even
Johansson's
when
been
even
hit.
when Kemper was in, they didn't play very well. He wasn't playing very well yet. So he's in tonight, I guess. Yeah, we gotta talk about that Anaheim goal. That's what you like to see in the NHL. I want to see more of that. I'm getting a little tired of this. Don't make mistakes, guys, type of game. And I'm glad, as we were just talking about, that there are teams out there that are allowing guys to be creative because that's what it's all about, man. This game is all about being creative, doing fun stuff. And that to me is what hockey is really what hockey is all about, getting the opportunity to do that. The sad part is I still think, let's say they make that he makes that move. It goes past him. He doesn't knock the puck down, and it goes on the Buffalo's player's stick, and they go down and score. And they're going to see that's why you don't make those plays and blah 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 blah. You know, those that can happen when you're playing a safe game and you like basically try a wraparound there and it doesn't go in 99 times out of 100. But you try something like that, and first of all, it's fun. Second of all, I don't think there's any. I think it's the way the game should be played, and I love the way Vegas, Minnesota, and Anaheim are playing right now. I want them all to win the cup. I want them all. I
Yeah,
want them to
no,
win the cup like that.
I think it's all exciting. Where I remember, I don't know, you probably remember. Remember when Hurdle came up and in his first game he went off and he had the one between the legs. He scored that really nice between the legs goal, and then a couple weeks later he scored another one in the slot too.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would always say, for like, I remember when I would read the Twitterverse would be, oh well, for a young guy maybe he should be a little bit more like just go with the regular play rather than going with the cocky play at times. Where if you went back and looked at all those plays, none of it was ever cockiness. It was more just a split second. Oh, this is over here. I have to go through my legs. Otherwise, I'll probably miss the puck.
Right.
And then he just had the skill. And then he just had the skill to do it. And then on the breakaway, he just roofed it through his legs. So that was ridiculous. And then the same with Kachuk. Kachuk in front of the net a
Matthew,
couple
yeah,
weeks ago.
yeah.
Yeah, Matthew Kachuk just had that brilliant
He
move
does
where
it
he
all
kind
the
of went through
time.
his leg,
Yeah,
roofed it up top. Yeah, which is like a great move to have in front of the net.
yeah.
You want to see all those guys use that.
Mm.
Where a lot of guys, like for example JVR here in Philadelphia, he used to showcase his in front of the net move. He hasn't used it in about a season and a half.
Right.
So where did that go? It seems like some guys kind of back off from what they actually have been known to do, whether it's confidence or the way the coach's positioning is telling them to be, where others coaches keep kind of instilling do you, do you, do you,
Yeah,
and just as long as you do it within my systemal guidelines,
yeah. As long as
then
you're
well,
doing it like, okay, when Matthew Tkachuk does that move, they're doing it for the purpose that they think that's a play that they could score. They're not just doing it to say, hey, let's make this look cool. Like what happened last night,
Exactly.
it looked like an instinctive thing that they have practiced. He saw an opportunity for maybe it to work, and it worked. And I mean, like even if he missed it with the stick, which was what made it really cool, right? Even if it just hit his body and happened to go in or whatever the case may be, it's a good play. If you can do it, you're getting the puck in front of the net. That's what everybody wants, right? And giving your opportunity to bang away at it if necessary, or hit it like they did and make a beautiful play like that.
Yeah,
To
it's
me,
also
that
the
almost shouldn't
cross.
even be. I want the NHL to get to the point where you go, that was a good play, rather than, oh my gosh, did you see that play? I
Yeah.
want that play to be a regular play in the NHL, stuff like that.
Well, it's also the lacrosse goals that Kaprizov, Aho, Svechnikov, obviously, as we've seen it a couple times, had the ability to pick up the puck like Trevor did, and instead of passing it in front, they come around and just lacrosse it into the front of the net as the goaltender's in his little vertical horizontal trying to guard the post and his shoulders down a little bit. They put it above his shoulder because they can lacrosse it right on their blade. Where if you can do that, I have no issue. I would always be a coach that is don't get overly cute. Like Boudreaux said that when he got hired by Vancouver. You don't want to be overly cute. You want to execute your offense, basically. That would be my motto. Don't get overly cute, but if you have an opportunity to execute a play like that, I don't consider that getting cute. I consider that being very good in terms of executing. And that's exactly what the Anaheim Ducks did on that play with Milano, who still continues to look much better with the Ducks. And then Zegras getting it to Sonny to be able to slam it in there. So that continues to be something that I think will be a good matchup there and a good matchup, especially for Sonny Milano's career, because we all know Trevor Zegras is going to have a hell of a career. So,
Well, Zegers, a lot of people have said that he's a cocky kid, and I mean, I don't see that. I see a very confident kid, but I don't see cocky. To me is like walking around thinking you're better than everybody. I don't see
like
that.
Hasek,
Like,
like Dominic Hasek,
yeah,
where as a goaltender is what cocky is. Yeah,
yeah, I didn't see him
Patrick
as
Waugh
I
is a
didn't see him
goaltender.
for Patrick Waugh as cocky. That is the picture
Yeah,
of cockiness,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. Fortunately for him, he can back it up, but still, I didn't see that in Zegers. I don't see Zegers like that. I see him as very confident, and he doesn't know he doesn't understand the word lose. That's what I love about Zegers. It's not like he gets mad and says we're not going to lose. He looks confused when you use the word like what? What? I don't get what you're saying. I don't. That doesn't compute in his head. That team is going to be amazing, and Zegras is, I think, going to be a pioneer of a way to play and act in hockey that we haven't seen. I don't know ever, but at least in a very long time.
Yeah, and I think the Anaheim Ducks are a perfect example of what we were talking about. That the Flyers like they have the B level guys and B plus, but they don't have the A. The Ducks have the B plus level, C plus, C minus level prospects that mix in, but they also have the A level guys like the Zegrases and the Drysdale of the world, where keeping guys like Getzlaff, who have been that great leader or great guys to keep to mold these guys as they come through. The Ducks are a perfect example of someone that some people have accused of hanging on to their captain too long in the past, but I think have done it just for this reason, where you want to keep having this guy that can mold these young guys in as they come up and kind of show them the ropes. Where Getzlaff's been doing that, and just like you would expect as an older player now, out like aging out of his prime, obviously, his numbers have gone up with the young infusion of energy when he's been in there this year as well, and healthy. His assist numbers have been very good this year because no matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're 36, 37, 38 at that point of your career. When you have this good of young talent come through your system, it's going to spark your energy as well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we could talk about last night's games. What happened? I got a couple that I really. I went to, like, sometimes I just take a break from hockey. I did watch. but I went to the gym last night and I didn't watch like as much as I normally do. Um, but like I didn't see much of the Toronto Maple Leafs game, mostly because they got up early. And then we were talking about the Blue Jackets, and they don't give up that team. They,
No.
it was almost a win to come back and get that game 5-4. Like it's
Well,
almost like a
also
win.
also their young goaltender, who is another guy that's up a little bit sooner than they would have liked, Danil Tarasov. He came in and went, I think it was 10 of 10 on saves, and helped them in that comeback after Wimmer's Lincolns looked very bad in that game. Where that was one of his off
He's kind
games.
of struggling lately, Merzlikins. I don't
He's
know.
come out. Yeah, it's one of those tied things. I think we always talk about it with goaltenders, where Kokkinen's kind of been the same way up in Minnesota this year, where I don't think he'll be struggling for the rest of his career. It's just something he's going through right now. But in Columbus, I always mispronounce his name. How do you pronounce the GM's name again?
Oh,
Kakalainen?
Kekalainen. Yeah.
Kekalainen, yeah. Kekalainen always seems to have the answer in net, where that they had, of course, like they always seem to have that one deeper guy, where they've had it with the guy that unfortunately passed away, and then they had it with different guys, whether it was Elvis a couple years ago or Corpy years ago, and they had other goaltenders. So now they have Tarasov, who's the third guy down. They seem to always just kind of have that guy you can call upon, where he seems to be the most talented of any of those guys of the last couple years, being the former third round pick. But again, he's a big guy. He needs to still develop his game, but for having to get called up this early in his career, he's looked pretty good. Just like a Noonan and other people that have got forced up this season have looked around the league just due to the COVID protocol still and goaltenders going out for that or other types of illnesses. So
Yeah. Uh, just the guy mentioned the Oilers here. We'll talk about that game after this. I knew the Oilers were going to lose that game, but Merzlikins to me seems like a guy that, in historically, from what I remember, a pattern. I could be wrong. It could be just in my head, but it seems to me that when he gets pushed, he has a he tends to falter. And this Tarasov kid, I think, is kind of intimidating him a bit. He's come up, he's played fantastic. He was hearing about him in the AHL. They came up, he got sick, came up, gave it a shot, and I think he puts a little too much pressure on him sometimes. All himself. Also, I wasn't really a big fan that he went out publicly and said he was going to go win the Vezina for his friend that died, the other goaltender.
that puts more pressure on yourself when you say Matisse Kivlenkins, yeah, you're going to go
Yeah,
out and yeah, I I,
I
I
thought
get
that
that
was
because
undue pressure that he had to put on himself
yeah.
publicly to go out. It's sort of an immature thing to say as well. Just go do it. You don't need to tell the world about it, right?
No, I agree because I have a similar like I don't have a tell the world, but I have the I put a lot of pressure on my
Mm-hmm.
self personality as well. Where I think it's not a bad thing to have. It's just you have to balance
You
it.
have to
Where
use it
now in the league,
properly.
right? Yeah, you have to use it properly. Where now in the league we have all these great sports psychologists in every sport that were not around 20 years ago, even 10 to 15 years ago, is much prevalent in the sport. If you have to use those people, you have to use those people. You can't be someone like I fell into the trap of before in life of saying, oh, I can figure out everything on my own. I'm not sure if that's where Elvis is, but he's a guy that I know is a freakishly talented. When he's at his best, you can see the athletic and talented ability he has, and that's why it looks like they're going to bank on him and not Corpy as being the guy that will stick around in the future, which I think is still the right move. It's just he's still growing into his prime. That's the next step now about how to correctly use that trait that can be negative or can be positive that you have, which is putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Because Carter Hart kind of does the same thing, which is why it could have been when he started struggling, it went down, but then he really worked his tail off on the mistakes he made because of that same personality of wanting to be the best because you put pressure on you. That now we see this season when he worked in the offseason and he bounced back. So I think Elvis can do the same exact thing. You can use it in the positive just like it can be used in the negative.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has really good runs too, and I think he's going to be a good goaltender. It's all part of the learning process. I'm not really worried about that. But it's just something that I noticed with him. If he gets pushed, and like I said, I didn't think it was a really good idea to come out publicly and be that vehement about, especially the way say I'm going to have a great year, but I'm going to win the Vesna for my like that's it's just too much drama. Goaltenders don't need to add more drama into their life. They've got the hardest position in possible sport, but at least certainly in hockey. And it's not something I would really want to add into my.
I think it was one of those emotionally driven things. It's kind of like um, whenever your owner, like if an owner or somebody that's an executive of your team passes and somebody in the team says, we're going to win the cup for, or we're going to win the finals for, it's kind of like one of those things. You say it in the realm of your emotional fire of wanting to do it for your boy, basically do it for your friend. And I think that's really what he got caught up in, where if he looks back on that now, obviously he wants to win the Vezina for Matisse, but he probably would say, I might have kept that eternal and tried to win the Vezina for him rather than having to put that added pressure on top of myself, on top of the added pressure of we weren't expected to be that good of a team this season to begin with if you're the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I think he probably would have decided to keep it more internal, but I get why he said it, because if you're in the high energy phase of you
He's a
lost
kid.
somebody, those are kind of
He's
the
young.
moments.
He's
Yeah,
emotional.
and
He's
he's still
passionate.
too. Those are the moments you'll
Yeah,
say anything.
it's
Yeah,
just something he's going to learn. I think over time to tone down a little bit. We've seen it with a lot of young goaltenders like that. It's just not helpful for the process of becoming a good goaltender to add all of that, add that stuff into what already is a difficult thing to do. Okay, let's.
that's true.
I think, anyways. Okay, so well, we were talking. That was about the Toronto game. Um, I just, but they came back and they did well. And I haven't talked to you about it, but to me, I believe the Toronto Maple Leafs, I did a complete turnaround on here. I thought I went from they're barely going to make the playoffs to now I believe they could win the cup.
All depends on the yeah. It all, like I said, we can only speak on what's happening now, and right now, I really like what I've seen. Campbell won the ECHL Alumnus of the Month, and also was the goaltender of the month because he was the second star of November and the only goaltender in those top three stars. The first was Dre, and the third was Kadri. With the rookie of the month being Raymond. So it it's a you have a guy in net that you want to have. I saw Mrazek just went on the IR, so I feel like the big thing on top of the fill out the roster playoff level moves that they're going to make late in the season will be getting a solidified backup for Campbell. So they don't fall into the category of those teams that their goaltender's too taxed by the postseason to be the same level of goaltender he was in the regular season. Because when you're Toronto, you want to finally get past that first round and then go from there, where it's going to be a lot harder to do if your goaltender is taxed at that moment because Peter Mrazek hasn't been able to stay healthy as his backup. And Wall's just a young guy that you don't want to overuse. Nothing against him. He's just a young guy you don't want to overuse. I think they might even be a team that would be in on one of the backup goaltenders that have been rumored on the market, because you have to bring in, I think, a more veteran third guy there in Toronto that is more of a proven veteran third guy at the NHL level, I will say, to have with Campbell so you're not taxing him by the playoffs. But in terms of how they're playing and their power play, their special teams on both ends, their 5-on-5, yeah, they look like the best team they've had in a long time in Toronto in terms of having the Richies of the world and the guys that kind of fit into that playoff structure too. They seem to have more playoff type players that can kind of give you that punch you need, that extra jam, as Lavi would say, you need in the playoffs. Now it's just about making sure you don't overtax your goaltender, really, and make sure you get the backup for him, because Campbell's only thing in his entire career that's really been the main reason he hasn't emerged before now has been he's got banged up a few times. That's held him back. And now that he's been able to be fully healthy the last couple years, knock on wood for the most part, he's been able to be a much better goaltender. You don't want to chance it though. You don't want to set him up. Another way to put it is you don't want to set him up for failure by playing him over like say 60 games, and then in the playoffs he's taxed because you didn't get him a backup. That's the thing that I think they need to worry about at this point, which is a very small thing to worry about. Where coming into the season, like you were saying, we were talking about this Maple Leafs team being more of, well, you still haven't done it. We love the roster. We love some of the players mixed in. But now you're actually seeing it come together, and you're seeing guys like Michael Bunting. I mean, look what he's doing out there. Come in and really infuse themselves well into the lineup, which is a part that was missing the last couple of years. You kind of just saw the same guys doing the same thing, getting them to the playoffs. You didn't see the new guys mixing in as much. You do see that this year with the Buntings of the world. Andre Casa was also a very good pickup. Hasn't played the last couple of years. Has looked good with Toronto this. So I think it's all just now. Maybe you're gonna have to add one more defenseman. Rubens, who is a former ECHLer that was fun to watch down there, made his debut for them. Tristan Rubens.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what he can do as a big guy. But I think the biggest thing is goaltending. Add a backup goaltender, and that roster is pretty much where I would
For
want it to
me
be for
now,
Puck.
I've gotten, it's not even about the roster. This team is like, these guys love each other on that team. Yeah, I haven't seen this deep of a family like type love for each other on a team for a very long time. And they are playing their hearts out for each other and believing in each other. This is beyond what you see on the roster. But I do agree, you got to get a backup for. You can't be playing Campbell 16 nights a game, and they don't really
Yeah,
they need a
exactly.
backup for sure, no doubt about it. But that's small compared to what we thought they were going to need.
Exactly.
And I think energy can change so many different, like, can fill in a lot of roster holes, and they've got it all day long. Anyways, let's go to another game here. These guys are talking about other games. I'll go to the Edmonton Oilers Minnesota game. Why not? I predicted this all the way. Edmonton. I'm glad that Tippett finally did, or not finally,
Acknowledge it.
acknowledged that
Yeah.
this team has not been playing good this year, and they haven't been. They've been just getting away with their power play and some great talent that they have there. Um, the Wild played your average like a good road game. They played a good road game, but it's not. They didn't play like this crushing defensive system that should, have the Oilers, you know, barely making it through the game like they were. Like the Oilers just played absolutely with no
Well,
energy and just pure garbage,
yeah.
pure garbage.
Well, the difference, I would agree with that. Well, the difference of this game, though, is you went down. There's a big difference between allowing the first goal, which you want to stop doing, which Tippett pointed out, which was, I think, a great coaching thing to actually, in the success of your record showing success, most coaches would not point out a flaw like that to the open public. I think that was a good move to kind of be a wake up call to the team to say, yo, we need to get this figured out. Otherwise, see how our record is now. Next month, we might be here and fifth rather than being in the top three if we keep going this rate. And we don't want to keep going that rate. We want to stay in the top three and be one of the better teams and be competing with Calgary in the Battle of Alberta all season. We don't want to fall off. So, in order to do that, you're going to need the better defensive play. But in this game, you allowed the two to start the game, which is a big difference than allowing just obviously one goal to start the game, where it was Eriksson Ek and then Foligno scored for his 11. Being down 1-0 is a problem in itself early in the game. Being down 2-0 only 7 minutes in
Oh,
is a much bigger thing when you're on the road, or when you're at home, and the team that's on the road comes in and just kind of flattens you in the first 7 minutes.
there was very
That's
little
something
pushback
you don't
by the
want to have.
Oilers, though.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's what it is. There's not enough pushback, but my whole thing is when you go down by two, if you haven't had the pushback when you're down by one, it's like I've been saying with the Flyers the past couple weeks. You're not going to have the pushback if you're down by two. It would be naive to think that if you have to find a way to pounce earlier more, which is something that lately, even in the game they lost to the Rangers and other games they lost, the Tampa the Flyers have done in the first 6 minutes. It's just they fell off after that first 6 minutes, where Edmonton did the opposite of that. They didn't show up in the first 6 minutes, and that really flattened it. And then after that, they didn't show up for the rest of the game because, like you said, they had no answer once they went down
all
1-0.
all year they haven't been showing up in the first, and that's what Tippett is saying now. And I'm sure he was telling them long before he got out in the public and said something
in the
about it,
locker room
for sure. But it's too bad because Minnesota's a great team and they're a great team. And I would have loved to see Edmonton play at all. Like they did not play one iota better than they did against Seattle when they lost that game. And Minnesota is way better than Seattle. So
Seattle, yeah, they're a 7-game winning streak. Yeah, they're a team that's been hot as a firecracker of late, and Cam Talbot has been very good of late for them. As long as everybody stays healthy out there, they should be in a pretty good
they
spot. But
they
somebody
play
with
an
Minnesota, I
incredible
know
team
we
game.
talk, yeah, exactly, and somebody we talked about last year, as well during his time bouncing back with one a little bit when he was with Edmonton, but also more so with the New Jersey Devils. Kulikov's kind of had a little bit of a career resurrection
Oh
these last couple
no,
years,
not last couple of
and is
years.
doing
This year,
well this year too.
Whatever
But even
Dean
with
Evison touches turns to gold. Like that guy is freaking insane, coach, man.
yeah, although even last year with Edmonton with his 10-game stretch, you didn't see it really, but with Jersey, you started seeing the like how you kind of before a guy fully gets it back, you start seeing the little glimpse like picture shots of it. Where then this year in Everson's system, you saw him fully get put in the right spot. Seemed like the coach kind of said all the right
He's
things, pushed all the
incredible.
right buttons, and he's now fully kind of come back and has the 11 points and has been one of the better two-way guys on their team. And also still for being a guy that's gone through injuries at 31, can skate pretty well for his age, and a guy that's had to battle through those injuries, being skating was once obviously his tag on his scouting report for being a positive. So he still held on to that pretty good and is definitely fitting into that system really well. That's another team, though, like you said about Toronto, I don't necessarily consider because they don't have as elite of a roster, obviously, as Toronto. I don't consider them a cup contender. But that Wild team, if they keep going this way, I might change that as time goes on because they have that same
Yeah.
kind of
Oh yeah.
together vibe
Absolutely.
feel of the Maple Leafs, where it's like they've kept the groups. That's why they kept Foligno. Where some people are like, oh, you're gonna pay Marcus Foligno that much money. Where like I think the reasoning is because you keep the same guys in the locker room that
Well,
everybody loves, everybody will ride or die for.
Foligno. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's still answering the call this year, where I think it was his 11th goal he scored
Yeah.
yesterday. So even though he's in the 3 million price tag now, he's actually proving he's worth the not just 1.9 to 2 million. He's actually worth that 3 something price tag. And they bought into the right guys and they kept the right leadership group. They brought in guys like Kulikov. That's a very dangerous team to watch. I don't know if I'll put it a cup contender rate, but definitely a very dangerous playoff team rate is where I would put
I'm willing to
Minnesota
put
at.
him in sort of contender status simply because you just don't know what, like you just mentioned, what a team can do when they're playing with this type of heart for each other as well. But also, when a coach is getting so much out of it, there is only two players on this team that are underachieving right now, and that's Kevin Fiala and Jordan Greenway. Besides that, and you could even make a case that maybe with Greenway it's not. This might be what he is, but every other guy on this team, like Ryan Hartman, are you freaking kidding me? Are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
like seriously? He was in Nashville, he was in Philadelphia, nobody saw this. Even his time in Minnesota, it wasn't until Everson came in. Now he's a 21-point player in 25 games. Matt Zuccarello, I don't think, if I remember correctly, has never been a point-a-game player. Victor Rass, 9 points in 15 games. He couldn't even make the roster in Carolina. Like every single player is overachieving pretty much on this team. Even Goligoski was, I thought he was very good. I didn't see him getting, being on a 50-point pace. Like every single player is playing above their heads pretty much, except for maybe those two guys. That's it.
Yeah. And also, Danny made a good point. The line, Eriksson X line, is definitely a very good shutdown line, which did shut down one of the better scoring lines in the league yesterday. But yeah, they mix in the good shutdown lines with the good offensive push the pace line, where Hartman at this point is in like his Connor Sheary zone, where it's like Sheary when he was at Pittsburgh was playing with a player that worked perfectly with him, which was of course Crosby. Kaprizov and him seem to just have that niche to work with each other where that you know how good Kaprizov is, he'll be talented with anybody. Hartman seems to have found his groove and his spot and his person to be with, just like Connor Sheary past, whether it was in Washington with their top six and the talented guys they have there, or of course in Pittsburgh. He kind of has that vibe going to him right now where he found the spot to be for him. So if I'm him, I would not want to leave Minnesota anytime soon. I think that's the spot
Oh
for him
yeah,
to be
I'm
and
not
then
leaving
get the
Minnesota.
success out of
No doubt about
career.
that
Yeah,
for sure. But you can say that about, like I said, the whole roster there is playing better,
yeah,
is
and
better
it's
than they're
also
playing. They're getting more points and playing better than their talent would suggest. It's a complete
yeah.
team game that
Well,
that makes everybody better.
it's what Danny said too, where Minnesota's offensive mindset is to go to open space. That sounds so simple, but so many teams don't take advantage, like the Flyers, for example, of open space on the ice, where you'll just see somebody standing there, like you said earlier, and they won't go to the open space to take advantage of it. Where the reason why you're able to get the most success out of teams like that, or out of teams like Arizona when they were able to get to the playoffs, other than just their great goaltending led by Kemper at that time, is you have you convince a bunch of guys whenever there's open space, just go to it, just go and fill it and try to make the play in the open space. Where it sounds so simple, but not enough teams do it, and that's why teams get into a spot like the Philadelphia Flyers, where they're at, or an underperforming team like the Vancouver Canucks, where they were at. They don't take advantage of the space in the ice enough, and that leads them to not having enough success. Where the Wild are a team, no matter what, they always do, like Danny very well pointed out. So that was a very good point, but by Danny. So I think that's a big thing there as well, where Evason's been great in Minnesota at being able to kind of tell people to use the open space. But the other side of it is that he hasn't been one of those coaches that people get trapped because they use the space to just kind of push the offense and then they get trapped defensively, which is something that you don't want to have obviously come around playoff time. Minnesota's been a pretty good team at being able to work their way back on the defensive end as well, which is a good strategy you want to have to help not just the regular season, but to have going into the postseason, because you can't just push, obviously. In the postseason, you have to have the bounce back on the defensive end, which I think the Wild have that ability as
Yeah,
well.
I really underestimate Minnesota talent. Well, I beg to disagree. I don't think if you had Minnesota, if AV was coaching Minnesota, they'd barely make the playoffs. I really do believe that. If you had an average coach coaching that team, I doubt they. I think they maybe make the playoffs, but barely. That coach has got the best out of those guys to an nth degree, and their history shows that they weren't what they are now until they got there. So many of those players. I mean, how many times does that have to happen before you have to look at the coach and go, okay, this guy's doing an incredible job? That's just by the way I see it, based on what they were before they got there and what they are now on so many of the players. I said the same thing about the Islanders. Like the Islanders on paper never were a team that really should have been making the playoffs. Barry Trotz got that. Barry Trotz was the main reason why they got into the playoffs. No doubt about it. Now they're starting to get tired and they can't keep up to a system, and you're starting to see a team that doesn't have really. They don't have the talent of the Tampa Bays and stuff like that to be able to do it. We're going to go over to another team.
Well, I could see the one thing I could see is Danny might be making that argument from also they still got Connor Dewar in the minors. You still got Matthew Boldy. You of course still got Rossi, who's been up a bit, hasn't played yet. Overall talent level, yeah, this organization has a heck of a lot more coming through the crop.
They
But in
got they
terms
got a
of
couple. They've
yeah,
drafted well.
yeah.
They've
But in
drafted
terms of
well.
the NHL right now, you are pulling the most out of guys like Reyes, guys like Rem Pitlick, guys like Sturm, excuse me, guys like Bukestad, and especially Ryan Hartman, who besides
Yep.
the production he's put out, he hasn't played center that much in his career. And he's been able to slot in at center for you to
Yeah.
be able to fill that hole, which
Yeah.
is something that's been a huge talk in Minnesota. Where's the centers? Like, do you have enough centers to be able to get to exactly where you want to go to? And he's really helped that out because Victor Reyes ain't a second line center. If he's able to
No.
figure it out, and play well, he's a prototypical
He's too.
third line.
He shouldn't even.
Yeah,
He wouldn't be in the NHL on most teams. Most teams
but
he'd be sitting
no,
on the.
but
He'd be sitting
if you
in
look,
the bleachers.
no, but if you look at his overall just back and forth, like the way he's played as a former second round pick, whether it's in the NHL or when he's in lower levels, he doesn't play as a second liner. He's more of a third liner. Where if Hartman could keep doing that, that's a major difference because he filled that second line center hole, which is something that they wanted to figure out until Marco Rossi is able to come up and take that next step, obviously. So that's something I think has been huge for the Wild this year. They have a lot of talent. It's just they're a roster similarly to the Islanders, where your coach is pulling the most out of that
No.
talent, the guys that are kind of the fill-in, the finished pieces of the puzzle guys. But another young guy that's fun to watch there is that Brandon Duhaime, kid who's 6'0",
Johan. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Duhaime, who
But,
I've been following in his time with Iowa covering the AHL, where he seems to kind of found his groove at 24 years old, being a guy that's caught up a little bit older than some other guys. That's how some guys are, where they let him kind of fully find it in the AHL, and I think that was a smart decision because he seems like a more mature player in his NHL call-up rather than if he came up at 21. I don't think you would have saw the same success rate that you're seeing from him right now.
but all right, I gotta get on to the other games there because we still got to go for our games tonight as well. Uh, okay, well, here's one that I believe that the Jets. It's the Jets and the Hurricanes. And I believe the Jets showed us that game, at least for now, anyways. This team isn't ready. This team isn't ready to make it. You can't beat. This was a game that Hurricanes team that yeah, this was like a meter of how good you are. A Hurricanes team that's missing two important defensemen on their team has been running through COVID. Just did a long trip over to the West. It's a spot where you've got a really good chance here. And I watched that game, and the Hurricanes just destroyed them. Like, at the very least, I'm not even saying win the game, but keep up with the Canes. They could not keep up with the Canes at all. Canes just absolutely ruined them. And I don't think that bodes well for this Jets team. This, I think they really have to look at themselves and ask themselves where they're going from here to play like they did against the Canes last night.
No, yeah, and I think I mean if we're talking about other guys that if it keeps going the way they're going, that could be on the hot seat. The Jets obviously could fall into that category because they got an underperforming team, excuse me, as we're currently at the current juncture. Where if Maurice can't start getting more out of that team, will he be a guy that is then on the open market eventually for other people to pull at? Where we'll have to see as time goes on because the last 10 has been ugly. The Jets started this season, they kind of were another team that you saw were winning through gaps in their foundation. And then now the gaps in their foundation, which is their defense not being as clean as you would want it to be, and all that stuff have come to full force. Where you saw it mightily against Carolina, where there was too much open spots for Carolina to take advantage of. And Carolina is obviously a very good offensive team, but if you were playing someone like Tampa in that game with the amount of open space you gave, 4-2 might have been 7-2. So like you just are giving too much opportunities there. You're giving too much A+ level chances against your team up each night that don't matter if you have an all worldly goaltender. if you're giving up those types of chances each night, you're not getting anywhere because your defense is basically Swiss cheese. Chris and I made the joke about the Flyers defense last year. You could get the team bus from outside and drive it through the neutral zone.
Yeah.
Well, against this Jets team right now, you could take the team bus from outside and drive it through the neutral zone and defensive zone right up the middle because nobody's playing good defense in the most high important spots to play good defense, which is the neutral zone and the obviously the slot. They're just leaving guys open like it's a like you're watching a bad college hockey team against Ohio State. Like it almost looks like that sometimes. Like when you watch college hockey where Ohio State's a ranked team and they're playing an unranked opponent, and you're like, oh my god, this is not going good for this other team. Like that's almost like how Winnipeg looks against some of these teams like Colorado, like the Hurricanes, who if it was college hockey would be one of the highest ranked opponents, and Winnipeg probably would fall out of ranking at this point with how they played in their last 10. So like that's why I kind of use that comparable where you shouldn't be saying an NHL team looks like an unranked college team, and that's kind of how the Jets have looked of late. Where of course my team and the Flyers have looked like that very poorly of late, but the Jets, they're a team you expected a lot more of, and they were finding ways to win through their holes in the foundation early. Now it's like we just talked about with the Oilers, they're not finding ways to come out on top through the holes in their foundation that have been getting now overly exposed.
Yeah, so I completely forgot. I should have been in on this game. Actually, Pionk, of course, wasn't playing last night because he took the Spezza knee to the head, and I will get into that a little bit as well. I heard some Twitter stuff where people are like thinking it was crazy that he got 6 games. Now, I don't think Spezza meant to knee the guy to the head, but I can't read minds, and neither can the people making those decisions. The fact of the matter is the guy was down on the ice and he kneed him extremely hard to the head. He was looking right at him, and it was looked very much like a revenge play because of what had happened before to Sandin. Put all that together, I don't think he got a. I mean, this was 6 games too much? Maybe. I know optically that's like really. Did he really even need to jump on him there? That's the other thing, too. Did he need to make that play? The guy was down. There was no need for him to make that play. So, unlike when we were talking about the Scheifele thing, that was a different thing. To me, this is more egregious than the Scheifele thing by a long shot. There is no reason why you need to make a play on a guy that's down on the ice like that way, the way he did. None whatsoever. Like that's not a
Yeah,
hockey play at all. He's not trying to get the puck. He's not trying to stop a guy from coming out in front of the net. He's not trying to do anything except jump on the guy. That's all he was doing. So I think that it was a fair. I think it was fair. I think it was the right. I don't know about the number. That's not up to me, but I think he deserved to get suspended for that play.
oh, he definitely deserved to get suspended. Where that play is more similar to like when you see guys get really like kind of get pissed off along the boards and then take the slash at somebody where it's clearly like a slash and could be a major slash because they slash the crap out of your hand or something when
Yeah.
you're fighting them along the boards because they get pissed off. That's one of those just undisciplined, not an actual hockey play.
No.
You just let your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah.
Where it looked like that's exactly what Spezza did. Where I think the reason why people were surprised was he's a first time offender that's been in the league for what is it now, like
I'm fine
15
with
years?
the six
Like,
games. Maybe it might be too
like,
high or whatever. I don't want to.
yeah, no,
I'm not going to haggle over
I'm fine
that.
with the game. Yeah, I'm fine with the game total, and I think he deserved to be suspended. I think the reason people reacted to it is the NHL typically goes on the lesser end, in my opinion, when it comes to first time offenders than they should, more so than they go on the higher end of where they should. Where with Spezza, they probably gave him an appropriate one, but the NHL is definitely not one of the better leagues when it comes to suspending players. So in this one, it seemed like they did pull the cards right there.
I think. I mean, yeah, you do have to take into consideration Spezza's character, which is without a doubt, no doubt about it. His character is unquestionable. But and I don't know if he did it intently put the knee there, but I do know you don't hit a guy like that. Period. Like,
No,
a
exactly.
guy's down on the ice, you don't hit a guy like that. Now, people have compared it to the Wilson situation. That's a little different. A guy jumps on your back. Yeah, you're going to get ragdolled. Okay, that's just the way it is. You don't jump on people's backs. And whatever little rabbit punching he did to Buchnevich and all that, none of that bothered me a bit. But this is totally different. This is like, and again, the Scheifele thing, I believe that was a hockey play that maybe he was too aggressive on at worst. But this one, that's not a hockey play. He's not trying to get a puck. He's not trying to stop a guy from going somewhere or anything like that. Doesn't even really have the puck. Yeah, bad mistake by Spets. And I'll take 6 games. Like, if you look at it optically, it looks terrible. Like, Pionk really could have had some serious problems there. Maybe does. He's in concussion protocol right now, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the reason why people were surprised too is you have Lemieux. Lemieux got what, 4 games, I think.
for the
I
bite,
want to say,
5 for biting. For
yeah,
biting?
5. Was it 5?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's where he is a repeat offender. Where I think the reason why people get surprised is the NHL is just weird with the suspension guidelines.
Biting
They
a
seem to
person's
kind of just
hand isn't going to end his career. Kneeing a guy to the temple
no,
could end his
yeah,
career. That's,
no, exactly.
yeah.
But it's just like they're very undisciplined, idiotic things that have no business in the game.
Sure.
Where I do agree with people that make the point of the NHL does seem like to pull a rabbit out of a hat sometimes when it comes to the suspensions. Oh, we'll give this guy 5. We'll give this guy, but in terms of, like you said, should they be suspended? Yeah, they should be. And then in terms of the games, we can't. That's nothing we have an effect on. And if the league wants to make a decision that some people think is wrong on that, then that's their own opinion
You
on
can
it.
haggle over that to a certain degree, I guess. But I think what happens with the Lemieux situation, and this is true, and I don't you call it right or wrong if you want, but part of the problem was it was Brady Tkachuk. The refs hate Brady Tkachuk. They can't stand him. Nobody can stand him on the ice. I love Brady Tkachuk as a person. I would not want to play against that dude. That dude, I want, like, when I'm watching him on the ice, I want to bite him. Like, I'm not surprised that he got bit. That's the thing, and that came into play. But the fact is, you can't bite, you can't bite, you can't bite no matter what. But if it was Brady, if it was like McDavid and he bit his hand, or it doesn't need Goudreau or whatever, something like that, then he probably would have got 10. Like, what are you doing? But Brady, oh, we kind of get your point, but you can't do that, dude. Okay, let's go to another game. Okay, we were talking about the Hurricanes. I didn't even get into like who scored or whatever in that game. Defense, yeah, they tried it with Dylan. I had my reservations about Schmidt, and it's Schmidt, right? I always get his name wrong.
Yeah, Nate
Nate
Schmidt. Yeah, Nate
Schmidt,
Schmidt.
and
Yeah.
watching him, I think he's a very limited player. He's got some offense, but he can't do much in the defensive end because of his size. And then the guys that they do have that are big, Logan Stanley, he's got bricks for feet. You know, it's same as Boyu. In some ways, they're super slow, and their speedy players don't get enough done. Dylan's been playing well for them, but it's it's a very mishmash defense that just isn't working very well. And it looks like their third and fourth line too is not like that used to be the strength of Winnipeg. Was it just Appleton that they lost? It seems like they lost a lot more than Appleton. Did Appleton, to excuse the pun, tip the apple cart so much that they have a poor third and fourth line all of a sudden? It's weird.
I mean, it definitely changed the structure because you could have, if you were doing this, you have Stastny, Lowry, and Vissalainen as your third. You could move Lowry and/or Appleton. It gave you more flexibility at the center position with your bottom 2 lines. I definitely will give them that. I don't think it should be like this whole, like Al Morgani kind of makes the joke, our Philly analyst, like we had with Niskanen and you had with Ellis. Well, you can't make the argument with Winnipeg. Like you can't say, oh, this one guy was the whole be all end all because you're making it seem like it's Mario Lemieux coming back from being out, or you lost Mario Lemieux. Where with the Flyers, sometimes they made it seem like Bobby Orr was coming back from injury and not somebody to that type of degree.
Right.
So,
Just wait a second. I gotta get a call here. You keep talking.
okay. Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where when it comes to Winnipeg, that could be a direct factor in it for people out there, but that can't be a be all end all because Mason Appleton is a very good player, but he's not going to be a guy that is a be all end all. Where Winnipeg needs to find a way to get more jump in their step, and Tominato on that fourth line doesn't really seem to be a fourth line center, so you might have to find somebody that can fix that out. Um, Jansen Harkins is okay on the. He's kind of is a fourth line player. And then Evgeny Svechnikov, he's can play on the fourth line and is playing well on the fourth line, but the way he plays the game doesn't necessarily profile as a fourth line. So you have interesting line structures in the fourth line there, and then the third line I do not mind. So I think it's just about pulling the right buttons in Winnipeg where Appleton's not a be all end all, but Toninato is not a fourth line center. So I think it has affected them more than they thought because Dominic Toninato is not a fourth line. He's not a consistent NHL level fourth line center. He's more of a swing between the AHL and then NHL guy, where you don't have that surefire NHL guy to platoon
Yeah.
there now.
That
And then also even Svechnikov, like I said, Evgeny Svechnikov's a bigger guy that can play on the fourth line, but he's a guy that when he got drafted, people thought was a little bit more of a third line offensive value, which you see the 8 points this year. He's doing solid offensively. You might even be able to argue he's not in the right spot because he's not necessarily a fourth liner.
well,
He can play the fourth line, but he's not necessarily a
Svechnikov
fourth.
actually is a top six that doesn't have the talent to be in the top six. That's the problem.
Yeah,
He's a
well, yeah,
tweener. He's a
but he
tweener.
could be a third. Like the way he's playing this year, in my opinion, this has been the better
Yeah.
season he's looked.
Yeah.
He could be the third line, but then the problem is Vissalainen can't be a fourth liner. He's not a fourth line. He's a guy that you want to have for his offense in the top nine somewhere. So it's more like it's kind of like you said, the structure and the puzzle pieces don't fit the best, not just defensively, but even forward structure wise with the roster they have. It's one of those type things. Bill, I think it was one of those things for the Flyers where everybody has a leadership group that it just gets stale, where your voice gets stale. It doesn't matter if you're in hockey, it doesn't matter if you're in business. Your voice just kind of gets stale over a certain time, and I think that's what happened with AV. Of course, in 1920, before the COVID lockout, the Flyers had success. After that, they had success in the return to play, but not so much, kind of more Boy Mallow in the playoffs. And then last season was a complete crapshoot and a complete crap show. And that's kind of where it continued this far this season, where it just once it went downhill after the first 10, I think the Flyers were 6-2-2, if I remember correctly. They were winning through the gaps in the foundation, just like I talked about Winnipeg finding ways earlier this season to win through the gaps of their foundation and have an unsuccessful last 10, well also 6, but last 10. Um, the Flyers were doing that. They didn't have the best special teams. They didn't have the best consistent 5-on-5 play. They were just finding ways to put pucks in nets early, getting great goaltending. Then it fizzled out the offense, but they were finding ways to win ugly games like they did against the Capitals, so on and so forth. Once that fizzled out, everything just went downhill and it never came back up, and it kind of had the same feelings of last season. So I think it was the right time and the right decision. Now it'll be interesting to see who the Flyers decide to bring in order to move the tide forward going forward. Um, and then CL, I hope Frost stays on the wing, better for his offense, doesn't have to be clogged up the middle. He has been looking a little bit different offensively on the wing, CL, from covering for Flyers nitty gritty in the minors and the AHL, the Phantom. I think he's looked his best he has in a while at center, though. He's played a better 200-foot game in the minor league level this entire season than he ever has in his entire career. And I feel like due to the lack of center depth with the Flyers, he probably will end up having to just play center going forward, especially if Kevin Hayes can't consistently stay on the ice. But we'll have to see
Yeah, right.
going forward.
I got a
And then
plumber. I got a plumber here now. So
okay.
I had to
And
take
then
care.
as for I'm just answering a couple of the questions that they
Cool.
put. As for Giroux, hockey news, I think Giroux is going to fit into, at this point, I might change my opinion if we keep going this time, but I think Giroux is going to be the Getzlaff type captain where the Flyers will keep him around even if they do go into a rebuild like Bill Tourlet recommended. They will keep G around like the Ducks did Getzlaff, so if he wants to do that, so you can just have somebody that's been with the team, been with the organization, been in the city, been with the whole entire culture of the team for a while that can just kind of instill that into the next vibe. So in terms of getting rid of G, I don't think that's a high possibility, but we'll have to see as time goes on in the future. But I was just answering some questions when you were
Good.
going because Bill asked about the coaching firing, and then Hockey News asked about Giroux, and Bill also recommended a rebuild. I don't think we will go into a full rebuild. I feel like Philly's similar to the Bruins style of thinking, where they never really want to go into the full rebuild no matter what.
Right.
But we'll have to figure it out as time goes on. Um, I'm assuming, Bill, you mean fire because you said, do you think it was a smart decision to hire Bergevin? Yeah, I do think it was a smart decision to fire him. Obviously, it's something you wouldn't expect to have happen after that team made that unexpected, ridiculous run to the Cup last season. But this year, you tried to make some moves. You tried to bring in the Dvorak's of the world. You tried to bring in other people to replace the guys you lost, like the Kotkaniemi's and the Shea Webbers of the world. And obviously, you can't replace somebody like Carey Price or Weber that well. But the guys you brought in to try to lessen the blow haven't, and it just didn't work this year. Where Bergevin ended up getting moved on from is similar to, like I said, with AV, but in an upper management perspective. Everybody gets stale after a while, where it was just kind of the right time to call that shot and make that move. And I think the Canadians picked a good moment to do it, and it looks like for now they're going to keep Ducharme as our head coach. It'll be interesting moving forward. My bold prediction, if he does get another job in the NHL, would be maybe if they keep going downhill. I wouldn't be surprised, like Hockey News tweeted yesterday, if AV is a possibility, even um, with the if AV is a possibility with them up there potentially in Montreal, since he can speak the Canadian as well. Um, Now let's see here. Do, do. And then Denny, as long as Fletcher's in charge, Philly's in trouble. I did say earlier, if Scott, who's never been accused of being a great owner since Ed passed away, the Flyers' culture and vibe has changed a lot since the great Mr. Snyder passed away, where Comcast is not the best ownership. But somebody that hasn't stepped in the past and has never been accused of having a pulse on the fan base, apparently Scott did step in and was a big part of why, and the biggest reason why AV was let go after that 7-1 loss. So yeah, that doesn't look good on Chuck Fletcher. I do think AV had a big part in the moves of the offseason, though, because all the reports around here, when they met together, kind of had a consolidated offseason plan of who to bring in, who to get. So I think that's a double-edged sword that both deserve the blame there. But yeah, it certainly doesn't look good right now. He has to recover this season for sure. Um, but when it comes to Mark Bergevin, um, the Canucks, I didn't even see. I've been so busy with other stuff, covering the AHL and other stuff. I saw that they were interested in him for their GM role. To be quite honest with everybody, I didn't even see that they did 100% hire him. The only thing I last saw, Bill and and others, is that it was a big interest. Where I've just looked it up now, and as of right now, it says Canucks. It still says interested in hiring And then, yeah, all I've seen right now is interested in hiring. I haven't seen that he's been hired by the Vancouver Canucks. Um, Again, if they get him, he's a new voice in there. He's a different guy that they brought in post Jim Benning. I don't think he would do bad in Vancouver and make the same mistakes. Everybody learns from the past experience. He also did some good in Montreal, obviously, like filling the roster, building the roster up, and what he knew was pretty much Weber's last year. So you got to give him props for the good as well. So I think Bergevin wouldn't be a bad spot in Vancouver. I honestly wasn't hearing that chatter as much. So I didn't think he would be a bad decision. It's just obviously he had a stale ending in Montreal, but that happens at times. Bill, I completely disagree with that. I don't know what you've been watching. I don't think Carter Hart has struggled this season. I think the defense in front of him has struggled. We talked about it earlier. Uh, Also, Bill, thank you for all the comments. That's just something we're gonna have to agree to disagree on. I think Hart's been fine this year. He does fall into the category that Pearlo and I talked about with Elvis Merzlikins earlier, where he kind of has that personality where he can be too harsh on himself, which can kind of beat him down too much at times. But this offseason, the whole thing with Hart was working on the gaps that he had in his game last year when he really showed the off play. Where last year is the season that I would 100% agree with you and say that Carter Hart was a really off was not the goaltender that you would expect Carter Hart to be. But in this particular season, I thought he's looked fine. He's been more zoned in positionally. He's made some key saves, like the save he made against the Kraken early in the season, and many more since, whether it's on Crosby, on Ovechkin, on others in games we played. I think when it comes to goaltending numbers, if you just look at, like, my one good buddy always says, stats are just flatlined, where they're a great thing to go off of. Bruce Boudreau said it when he got hired by the Canucks too. Stats and the tendencies of goals expected and goals for, they're great things to go off of for tendencies, but you have to obviously see what's going on to be able to have the full picture. And from seeing what's going on, really paying attention to the Flyers, I feel like Hart's been fine and been none of the Flyers' problems this season. Realistically, the first game goaltending was a major issue for the Flyers this season. Was last game that they looked very poor, and that, well, the last two games that they looked where Hart didn't look the best against Tampa, but the Flyers looked like crap against Tampa. And then against Avalanche, Morton Jones looked really bad. That was his first off game, but the Flyers defense still looked like doo doo. So for a goaltender to obviously have the squeakiest clean and the best numbers he can possibly have, it's like a quarterback in football needs the receivers and the running back to do what they need to do around him. Obviously, the goaltender needs the defense to do around him. So that's kind of where I'm at with Carter Hart. I feel like Carter Hart has been perfectly fine this year at 5-7-3. Record don't really mean anything in terms of play. I think he's been fine. It's just the Flyers haven't been able to fill the gaps around Carter Hart. I don't think Carter Hart's been any of the issues for the Flyers this season whatsoever. That was just answering a question to Bill.
Yeah.
And then also Bill, yeah, the Islanders broke their losing streak. That's something everybody was waiting for, and I've been answering all the questions lately. So since you're back, Pearlo, I'll give this one to you. Bill asked, "Do you think they should get rid of Barry Trotz?" What's your thoughts on Barry
No,
Trotz?
no. You know, it's the biggest mistake any organization has ever done is fire Barry Trotz. Nashville Predators, Washington Capitals. I mean, Lavi's doing a good job in Washington right
Although
now,
the
but
Capitals was more, he just decided to. The Capitals was a little different, where
no,
that was like a firing, but also a
he. It
I'll
was
go
there was a
accept a challenge
contract.
somewhere
It was a
else type
contract
thing.
thing. They
Yeah,
didn't want to
the
pay him that
contract
much,
expired, and yeah, you never wanted to pay
and
him. Yeah.
they thought they had something in Reardon. They thought Reardon was going to be every bit as good as Trotz. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. It was a stupid move.
No, Reardon's so
You get a
has been
coach like Trotz,
consistently.
you don't let him go. He wants $5 million a year. Sure, here you go. Like, geez, what the heck are you doing? It was a bad move, and they know it's a bad move. I'm sure Washington kicks themselves all the time. That now, I mean, Lavi's doing a good job there, or whatever the case may be, but he's not doing any better than Barry would be doing if he was still there. Like, you don't trade Barry Trotz. You don't trade Dean Evason's. Or you don't trade. You don't fire Dean Evason's. You don't fire Barry Trotz. And I still think you don't fire Tortorella's either. That's not your problem. But if you got a Larson in your back pocket, I guess you can get away with it. I didn't realize that. And
Yeah, that's the thing. You hired a very good AHL mind where the Capitals hired somebody that it's not that he's a bad, like Yarif always says. It's not like he's a bad coach, a bad mind in the game. It's just some guys are meant more for an assistantship role, and other guys are meant for being able to actually take the head role. Where thus far Todd Reardon has always seemed more as an assistant head coach than a head coach, and that kind of came to a head when we saw him as the head coach in the Washington Capitals organization. So
they have too many players that pass their prime. Like all of these things, the Islanders have had a average to above average roster for quite a long time now. This is no surprise. They're
yeah,
pooched out. They always were. They were always the last month of the season. They would all remember they'd always fall, end up being about seventh, and then kick ass in the playoffs once they got some rest. Like they don't have enough depth. They don't have enough
well,
organizational
that's
depth,
why I said
prospects,
the
all that stuff
Islanders
like
to me.
that. That's
Yeah,
always been the
that's why
case.
I said they need to be like the Phillies and not fall. Be the opposite of how my baseball team was, and not fall into the place of holding on to your precious franchise darlings for too long,
Yeah.
like the Baileys of the world, the Lees of the world. Where the Phillies, they did hang on to them too long, and now you're in this decade-long like crapshoot of a situation because you didn't build up the system enough behind people and you held on to the guys when their value was not going to get you the most value. Where I don't think you should blow, obviously, if you're going to keep Crotch either. I don't think you have to blow the entire thing up, but you do have to bring in more young talent, like I said before. And I think that would be via picking somebody from the group to move on from, where it probably wouldn't be Lee because he's your captain. But if you decide to pick anybody else from the group that you go, okay, we can kind of survive moving on from, like, say, a Bailey or something like that. You got to move one of your contract guys that are aging out to bring in some younger talent, or two of them, because you have to load the prospect system a little bit more so you don't have that same issue that other NHL teams have had, but also my baseball team very much so had, recognizably so. They had their winning years. They held on to the winners from the winning years too long, and it bit them in the butt. You don't want that to happen if you're an Islanders
Yeah,
fan. With
I
the
think they're still going to be okay. Like they got the Olympic break, they're going to get some more rest. They just need to get some more rest. No team. It hurt this team more than any other team to have a short off season because of what we talk about, the age of some of the players, the how much that has been put on the ticker for those guys. Like every season, they really didn't have. You don't see guys being moving in and out of the lineup in Long Island. Like it's the same roster
well,
every
this
single night,
yeah,
82 games, right? So
that is the difference. That's a good point. This year they had to move a lot of guys in and out because of COVID, and that makes all the difference. But I just don't want them to fall into the same pain that Philly's fallen into with their baseball team because they held on to their precious winners for too
oh
long.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're not that's the thing. Like,
yeah.
I don't want them to make that same mistake for their fans where they have had good depth. Like, they have had some of the good, but the thing that the Islanders filled their depth with, not picking all the best guys to fill with young guys, is like, I watched him when he was there with Bridgeport. I thought he was the most exciting guy on the ice against the Phantom. Is Austin Zarnik, who's always been a very good AHL or a very blah mix in NHLer. When he's been playing for 3 games this year with the Islanders, it looked like that confidence wave, and playing in Trotch's system will do this for you. But the confidence from the minors carried into the NHL for the 3 game period where he's filled in better than I've seen him in his entire NHL career. So you fill those gaps like that, but you have to also have the guys that perform that you think are going to develop, like the Wallstroms and the Bellows, who are still very young. They're not fully there yet. One's 23, one's only 21 in Wallstrom. You got to have more young talent that comes in, and that's going to be via trading some of your veterans, whether that's Josh
Well,
Bailey or whether
Bailey's
that's
gone for sure. It's that problem is they
yeah,
can't find a
or
home for him anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
So,
Or Palmieri, who's having a down year this year, if you decide to move on from him. Somebody like that has caps on their
oh yeah, we
contract.
didn't talk about that too. Yeah, I think the Truba hit was clean.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I don't think I saw it, and I tried to watch it from a couple angles. I don't think the hit was wrong unless if I couldn't see his feet, so I don't know if his feet, but if his feet didn't elevate, I don't think it was a bad hit. I think it was just one of those plays that happens in the speed of the game, and it was great to see Kahara. We saw the update last night from the Blackhawks
Yeah,
on Twitter that he was up and he was responsive and everything. And that's something I retweeted something out that said prayers up for him because you never want to see that
it was
happen.
whiplash.
But
It's
yeah, it was whiplash
whiplash for
in a
sure.
contact sport. It happens on occasion, and it just happened to happen where I don't think there's any hard feelings in that play. He knew. I think that most people knew it was even a clean hit because it's not like you saw Trouba get guided to the bench, but then you saw Strome, I believe it was Ryan Strome, went over and went, "You guys need to come out here to attend to him."
Mm.
And the guys weren't occupied on beating each other up; they were occupied on getting him the help. And I think combined with him being down, but also them realizing that was just in the pace of play
Yeah,
type play,
yeah.
they weren't going to beat the crap out of Jacob Trouba. It wasn't. I don't think it was a malicious play at all. I think it was just something that happened in the speed of the game.
No, I didn't do anything
No, I
wrong.
didn't.
He didn't do anything wrong.
I
I
didn't do
don't
it.
think.
The refs also beating up the refs, rightfully so, this year a lot because they've been very bad. But in that individual instance, I thought the refs did handle it pretty well because they dispersed the little crowd pretty well. Strome came over, he got the people out there, and then the referee also did a good job at kind of getting Trouba just over to his bench and telling him just chill by your bench, just so nothing does happen. Where I think that was really one of the only times I can point to this year that I was actually happy with refereeing because it has been very limited this season. But that was actually a good job by the officials there to be able to take control of that after that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting an echo again for some reason. I don't know why it's coming back to hit me. Anyways, I hope everybody can hear me all right. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a good hit. Anyways, we did. We got games tonight to get to and a half an hour to go. So uh, there was another question. I just had my plumber come and tell me it was going to cost $450. I was like, get out of here, kidding me? Oh, unbelievable. Tonight, we got okay 4 games, so we should be able to do them no problems. We talked about the Flyers quite a bit. It'll be the
Oh, wait a minute, real quick. Bill just asked. Your volume also went low.
yeah because I was
It said
getting an
low.
echo, so I'm trying to adjust things a little bit.
Okay. But while you're doing that, I'll answer this real quick for Bill. He says, Joe, rumor has it that Tuukka Rask will be back after Christmas. Do you think he can be back to himself? Well, he has been practicing in the Bruins facility, where the other day, because of Allmark having a non-COVID illness, he actually had to be their emergency backup. So he was the e-bug that got to actually practice with the Bruins per league rules, because if you're the e-bug, you can practice with the team. He got to practice with them while being unsigned. So already everything was pointing in the direction of he was 100% going back with the Bruins. That just made it 150% basically that he was going back with the Bruins. Where I don't think it'll be one of those things, Bill, that he immediately comes in and is Tuukka Rask, because that would be naive to think he hasn't played hockey in an entire calendar year. But he has been around the team. I think the teams within the rules done all the right things, keeping him around as much as they could, and then they kind of got uh, almost a, I don't want to say a blessing in disguise because it was because somebody else got sick, but they kind of got a situation that worked out for them where he was able to be the e-bug and then practice with the team, and everybody got back into the groove. They said the practice was very lively and energized that day. Everybody loved seeing Tuca back. So I think it will bring that energy and something that Boston in most years has, that is the little thing they've been missing, that extra gear this year that they haven't always had, where part of it I think is because Allmark has let in at times, those off goals this year. He's been inconsistent where that kind of gets a team down early. And when you have a lot of these young guys mixed in with your veterans, that's going to affect you more than it used to in the past at Boston. If you bring in a guy of Reyes caliber, he's bringing that energy, he's bringing that vibe to the rink. I think that's going to make a difference. His play, though, probably will take a couple weeks to get back to being what you can expect from Tuukka Reyes. I don't expect a guy to just come in from not playing a whole calendar year and be one of the best goaltenders in the league immediately. But do I think he'll play well? Yeah, and I think the Bruins will be energized whenever that decision is made to actually sign him back, which it seems like Bill said, it will be post Christmas, probably sometime around the holidays and or the beginning of the new year. So that'll be a good happy new year present for Bruins fans. Tuukka Reyes back that
Well,
potential.
I know that they're hoping now because neither Swayman or Allmark has really taken the post, and they sure would be. They're sure hoping that
Well, I
he
think
can get
Swayman
back
has
to
played
like
bad. Yeah.
90% of what he was before because they neither have been playing bad, but they haven't taken the post. Like
No,
they're
but I
not they
think
haven't
that's
did something where like, oh, we don't need Rask.
no,
Right
no,
now.
exactly. I agree with that. But I think Swayman's also because you paid Allmark, you brought him in, so you want him to kind of figure it out. In my opinion, they've been pushing Allmark more than Swayman, because of the whole we put the money and cards
Yeah.
into you, so we want you to work out. Where Swayman's kind of become the odd man out since they know Rask is going to be coming back, where he's a very good young goalie, but they know by default he'll be back with Providence kicking butt and then he'll come back up next year, and then you reassess the situation then. So I feel like they could be in a better spot now, similar to how I always felt with Dallas with Ottinger, even though I think Ottinger's a little bit better than Swayman. They just haven't really given him the board to take that opportunity yet. And for them, it's a different reason. It's because they signed a guy and put all the cards into him. For Dallas, it was just for whatever reason they decided to keep adding other veteran goaltenders around him where that's kind of part of the issue in Boston. But the other thing is you put yourself in this contract with Allmark, so you want it to work out. So that's why I think they're giving him all the shot, where Swayman isn't getting it, who I think would be the better option with how inconsistent Allmark's played. Because Swayman's been inconsistent, but it's been young age inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Where Allmark's been inconsistent, where it's been positional inconsistencies, and he just hasn't had the sharpest season.
Yeah,
So
he doesn't look as good as he was in Buffalo. Maybe because it's more pressure there in Boston. I don't know, but
I think he'll
uh,
figure it out. It's just not there yet.
yeah.
But
And then as far as New Jersey, I thought they'd be better than they are this year, but they're too soft yet. They just don't have the. They're just learning what it means to win in this league. I think they certainly need to get. I think they need some more players like Mercer, but bigger. At least
that
one.
makes
I love Mercer, of course. He's fantastic, but they need some guys that can bring the pain there. Just plain and simple. They
or
don't. They
bring the
don't.
jam.
They don't have it. They can skate and
Yeah,
bring pain.
yeah, I agree with that. They have the skill,
Yeah.
like all abundantly that you want to have on your team. Now it's just about filling the roster with the guys that can be bigger and be more physical around the skill players, like we saw obviously with young guys. Jordan Greenway in Minnesota does that, but also you brought over Stone from overseas, who's nothing too sexy of a player, but uses his body well, plays a good bottom six type of style. They haven't got to that point yet where they're either plucking the guys from overseas or adding them, because the Devils are right kind of at the cusp of being at the end of their retool rebuild, where now is kind of going into next season, really the point where you see this year how you played, where it's like we got the skill, now we need the jam. That's kind of what your next step is. Where next season, I think, is the year you're really going to maybe see if they make the right moves, like you were talking about. The Devils be that team that's more in the Ducks, like for some surprise category, or really doing better than you would expect to come into the season, like some of these other teams are doing as well, like the Flames, for example, doing a lot better than expected, because they're only adding those bits and pieces away from that as long as Blackwood stays healthy and everybody else keeps developing around as they've been doing.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, I don't know who's gonna. I honestly could go either way here. New Jersey's been playing poorly. Philly's been playing poorly. Yo, uh, I hope Yo's voice does something here and they play with a little more pace and stuff. And because if they don't, New Jersey's going to eat them alive. Honestly, if
No,
if
yeah, I
Philadelphia
agree.
keeps on playing like plays like they have been playing, maybe a little better in Colorado, but before that, New Jersey will destroy them. Like that's
I
one thing
do
that they
think
have.
though,
They can play
yeah,
with some creativity down low and get on you quick. So
I do think though if we can play like Lindblom, I think because he has obviously more skating speed and skating ability than JVR. He's a guy that even with AV, yeah, he hasn't been having the most successful season coming back from his cancer treatment and everything. But what makes you think you're going to be able to find success and get a guy's confidence up burying him on the fourth line? So I think what Yo did, putting him up there with TK and everybody, that got his confidence back up last game because he had a different jump in his step that you did not see this entire season. Out of Oscar Lindblom getting that confidence kind of instilled in him from his head coach, where sometimes that's all it takes. TK got going. He had a couple assists. Hayes playing through injury, which I don't think he should be doing. It looks like he's playing through injury though. Had a couple assists. So you have these guys. They kind of came into their own, like things you wanted to check off happened in the first game. It's just your defense was still putrid, and it was an off game for Martin Jones. So you still need more to happen, but the checkbox definitely was there
yeah,
for things you
well,
wanted to see happen in the first game. Where if you can play with that offense, I think we could beat the Devils. The problem is with the Devils offense, that might be a 5-4, a 6-5 game again if
really.
you play with that same shot.
Blackwood hasn't been as good as I thought he was going to be
Yeah.
either. So
Well, no, I'm just saying if both teams play with the same shot, I'm not talking about goaltending. I'm just talking about like both teams keep playing with the same shoddy defense they had of late.
yeah,
That might be more like the Colorado game again, where it's an offensive bout, where then it would be can the Flyers offense do what they did in Colorado and actually keep pace with the team, or will it go back to how it was in the previous 8 games, which is they can't keep once they start getting scored against, they can't keep pace. I think that's going to be the biggest thing tonight, not because of the goaltending. I don't think Blackwood hasn't been as sharp lately, but at the same time, like I said, um, about Lincoln's and also particularly about Hart when Bill talked about it, your goaltending, just like your quarterbacks in football, with how good your receivers and running backs do around you, your goaltending can only do is good at a certain point with how everybody around him is picking up the slack as well. Where with the Devils, that's not happening of late. It was happening earlier in the season, and then with the Flyers, it sure as heck ain't happening of late. So I feel like if it's a higher scoring game, it won't necessarily be because of bad goaltending. It would be more because of bad defenses. But
well,
that's just
I mean, neither. Yeah, Blackwood wasn't isn't playing as well as he was last year. So if the defense isn't as good either, because it wasn't good last year, then yeah, I could definitely see some higher offense. But putting Lindblom, we got to get over to the next game here. Putting Lindblom just for the energy alone of just for the change of energy in the team to have a guy like Lindblom, what he's gone through, get on the top line. I think it just makes it's just a better feel good feeling, which I think Philadelphia needs. It was a good move just for that alone, right?
yeah,
So all
exactly.
right, let's get to the next game. Avalanche Rangers, and did they tell they said it's going to be Adam Huska or Huska, who is
Huska,
this will be
yeah.
his first game, and he put some pretty good numbers in the AHL. And Darcy Kemper, who really hasn't been putting it all together so far this year, which could be because he's been playing through some injury stuff. This injury stuff for Kemper has been going on for quite some time. Him and Ranta were the injury twins in Arizona. Uh, so let's hope that that's not the case anymore. But with that being said, Rangers are on a back-to-back. Had a tough one against Chicago, even though it was 6-2. That 6-2 didn't happen until after Kyra. Besides that, it was a 2-2 game after the Kyra problem. Uh, so this is gonna be tough sledding for the Rangers. I know they've been hot, but I think this is gonna be a really tough game playing for their young goaltender here.
Yeah, I do think Huska, he has been doing good after coming out of UConn in the AHL. And I do think he'll carry that over to the NHL. It's just obviously Adam Huska is not Igor Shesterkin, and neither is Georgiev. Like they haven't had one of the best goaltenders on the planet as a young goaltender of late. in the last couple games, and that does make a difference. So the fact that they were still able to find it, albeit, yeah, like you said, after that hit to get to his 6-2 tally, I will give them that. But I'm kind of excited. This is a game that's more. I feel like the with Kemper back now, um, it'll be interesting to see because I saw that they put a Noonan as a scratch tonight and haven't sent, at least according to NHL, and haven't sent him down yet. Colorado, so I don't know
It's
what the
going to
line
be
of thinking was
Johansson
going.
in tonight.
Where no, it's Kemper. It's supposed
Oh
to
yeah,
be Kemper,
right. Kemper, right.
where Johansson's the backup. Where if I'm Colorado, I'm flipping that. Noonan's been very good as a rookie in the minors this year. Johansson's been off. What
Oh
got
yeah,
Johansson
yeah.
going? What got Johansson going last year in Colorado? Going down to the Eagles for a little bit and then coming up and figuring it out. I think he kind of needs to do that again.
Oh
But with Kemper back, I think that's going to bring an energy into the Avalanche too where they're kind of play their better defense that they haven't seen of late. Well, yes, Kemper hasn't been the same Darcy this year. Keith Jones brought it up when he was on the overall NHL coverage, but he's still a hell of a goaltender and a guy that you expect to bounce back and be able to bank on. Where when you get those guys back in your lineup, it brings that different level of energy that goes beyond the play on the ice. It just like brings that different jump at the beginning of the game in your skates and I think that's in part to the way that the Avalanche have been playing is why they'll be able to squeak out a win in New York in MSG against the Rangers in this one. But I don't think it'll be too spread of a game. If I had to make a guess, this would be like a 3-2.
oh, I think it's going to be over that. I think it's going to. Colorado's Colorado's offensive aggression and possession game is absolutely fantastic. When they start swarming in the offensive zone, they're almost unstoppable. It's crazy. And when you having Kemper in there, he hasn't looked great. So I think he could still continue to not look great, and there could be a couple goals. Oh, it's only a six, so I
Yeah.
think it's going to be. But I'm going to take I'm taking that. I'm going to go Colorado too. I just
Well,
with the
since we
Rangers
just
being on a back to back, Colorado is can really take advantage of even close to any heavy legs there. So
since we do only have two more games, though, I will ask you this: how Kemper adds the energy of like being that, even though he's not having the same season, but being one of the guys that when is at his best is in the top 10. Obviously, discussion as goaltenders that I think having a young guy, not necessarily in age, but in his career, in Adam Huska come in too. You know you want to step up and play well for your young
oh yeah,
goaltender in his first
yeah. There's
NHL
that
game
too. Yeah,
at
yeah,
24. So I
yeah,
think both teams are gonna kind of have that added energy
yeah.
where you see better defense than you've seen. Well, the Rangers have been playing solid defense all season, but you see better defense than you've seen of late from the Avalanche with McNamee back there and Jack Johnson back there. McNamee's the guy I was trying to think of earlier, by the way, which are not guys you would consistently want back there as much as they are. Where that'll kind of spark plug it. That's more of the reason why I thought the score would be lower than expected because both teams are going to have that energy to play for the goaltender that's back and then for the goaltender making his debut if you're the Rangers.
Yeah.
So
It's a bad team to make your debut against
no, it is not a
Colorado.
fun team to make. But also Alex Lyon, who just is an undrafted journeyman goaltender who's doing really well for Chicago in the AHL this year. He's a guy that obviously stepped up and got a win against Colorado, and he's not a guy that people think is going to be able to hold down an NHL job. He never has. He's more of that third goaltender that's been a very good AHL as an undrafted guy. So anybody can, if you're hot, come in and beat a team in the league if your team plays well around you. And Lyon did that when the Flyers did that in the past. If the Rangers can do that tonight against the Avalanche, then there's no reason to think Huska can't do it. And Huska also is a guy that people think could potentially be an NHL backup. Only at 24 years of age right now, getting the call. Where Lyon's more of, like I said, one of those swingmen,
Yeah.
and
All right,
he
let's
got
get to the next one quick because we got like 10 minutes. Uh, this is an interesting matchup. Jeremy Swayman's going to be in for Boston, which I think really is a guy that they should be rolling with right now. He's looked a lot. He's looked
exactly.
better out of the two. I imagine Thatcher Demko will be in, but last time they played Boston, they put Halak in because he played for Boston, and that has a tendency to have an energy to it too. But um, and they haven't confirmed that Demko will be in. Uh, so should be interesting. I think we're talking about. Uh, I really like the. We didn't get to talk about that. I really like the hiring of Boudreaux in this spot for them. He's going to change the energy of that team quite a bit. He's one of the funniest guys you're ever going to meet. He's great that way. He's fun. He likes to have fun when he plays. He likes his players to have fun. He likes to play a fun way. And I think Vancouver needs that all day. So I think it's possible he could go with the fun play and go Halak back in. But I don't know. At this point, I think I'd go with your best goaltender and take Demko. I have a feeling Vancouver's going to pull this one out. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because they showed that energy. Obviously, the Kings have been a much more competitive Kings team this year, and they beat them 4-0. Where Besser, who's somebody that Bruce Boudreau actually pulled to the side, where they said in his first practice he kind of pulled him to the side to calm him down and say, like, basically say, look, we know you're an all-worldly talent. You haven't been putting it up this year. You just kind of calm down, play your game, and relax, and don't grip your stick too tight. He got a goal in that game. I believe it was the first goal of the
Mm-hmm.
game on Monday to get them started. And he definitely instills that new energy. And a Bruce Boudreau team is going to have that offensive pace push
Yeah. Oh yeah.
where it looked like the Kings got shell shocked a little bit from a change of adjustment with Vancouver, even in game one, where it's going to take a bit to adjust to the Greens Vancouver, to the Boudreaux Vancouver from teams around the league. So Boston might be a team that falls into that little bit of a shell shock of a wait, Vancouver never played at this pace last week. Like
Yeah.
we weren't watching this on the scouting tape.
Yeah.
Like where the hell did this come
Yeah.
from? Where with Boudreaux, you always see that pace push differently. I would have to agree with you here. I would have to lean towards them just because they have that instilled. It's like I was talking about the energy with the goaltending with Colorado and New York. They got that energy because of the
Yeah.
coach, and he came in. He was hilarious in his first press conference too. He said he was working with his junior team, which obviously these guys are a lot
Yeah.
quicker and better at this point than junior. But he said he thought he was going to die on the ice in his first practice with the guys skating
Yeah.
back past him because of how much faster paced it
Of
was
course. Yeah.
than working with the junior team, and also his skates weren't sharpened
Yeah.
as well as
Yeah.
he would have liked since he hasn't. So he said, yeah, for two reasons, I thought I was going to
I
die
don't
out
think
there
his
today.
skates touched. I don't think he's touched ice for a while either. That was the other thing too. Um, I got two. I just realized though. I don't know. I think I'm gonna fade because Marchand's playing tonight. This is his first game back after he got suspended, right? So Marchand's in tonight, first game back. Um, and it turns out that Charlie Coyle is going to be in the lineup tonight. That makes me a little less on Vancouver. I think I fade it completely. Um, but and the question: do you think they're going to hire Bergevin? No, I think somebody just pulled that out of their butt because he's
No,
out
well, it
there.
was interesting. Yeah, it was rumored, and
I just
that's
think
the only
I think
thing.
somebody
Yeah,
just pulled that out because he just got
when
fired.
Bill brought it up, I didn't know because I was busy yesterday. I got dental work done, so I was kind of MIA all day. Where I haven't paid. I didn't even realize they were in on him. Then when I looked it up, I didn't see he got hired. Again, though, everybody learns from the. He had a bad stale falling out. Obviously, last year he did do the right things to give the team a chance in what he knew it seemingly was Weber's last hurrah. It seemed like he kind of knew that and brought in the pieces responsible. But then this offseason, the people you brought in to replace, or not really replace, but try to lessen the blow of people being out, that didn't work. So it makes sense that you got fired. But it's kind of like the hockey guy said. If you would have told me before this year that Bergevin would have been fired at this point of the season, I wouldn't have agreed with that because of what happened last season. But I agree with the move now because of the results that happened on the ice. Now, can he go somewhere else and have success? Sure, but I don't know if it'll be Vancouver.
If you would have asked me that before Shannon said that he would have said no. I probably would have said no too, but I also would have said I think he should have already been, and they caught lightning in a bottle, and he just saved himself for longer, but he didn't. So I think that they know that they caught lightning in a bottle last year, and I think that they were always looking towards a guy like Gordon and a rebuild for this organization. And if you look at their drafting record, Montreal's, which has been very, very poor, uh, that Bergevin probably wasn't the guy that should be doing that. You better be drafting well. If and you could say whatever you want, you got unlucky or blah blah. That's what he said. He said they just got unlucky. Well, I mean that's pretty unlucky. Not a single first round pick up until Kokaniemi, which you stretched for and turned out doesn't even stay on your team, and
And it's having success in
and
Carolina
having
now. Yeah.
success, some success in Carolina. That is just a very, 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 very unlucky record. It's not likely that it's to do with luck. So I think it was a good move. I think if you're going to rebuild, I mean, you just look at what he did. Gordon did a good job with his Rangers team, and it wasn't really his performance in rebuilding that team that got him fired. Even it was something within the confines of their closed doors or whatever. I don't know, but I think it was a good. You couldn't if you're going to get a guy, you might as well get a guy that did what he already did once, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, but I would say they're rebuilding for sure. By the way, I did a video on this, guys. Go up, check it out. I talked about this. So I think that's why Marshawn is nicknamed Ratface.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Marshawn is. I love Marshawn except for the licking incident. Besides the licking incident, I love Marshawn. That was that was yeah, that was stupid.
He's one of those guys. If you play with him, you love him. If you play against him, you want to beat the living you know what
And
out
I
of him.
love guys that people hate.
Yeah.
I love those guys. I've always loved those guys, and I like him for that. But the licking incident, to me, it should have got more of a suspension than it did. And I mean, I'm a guy that's pretty liberal with stuff like that, but that was ridiculous. Like that was horrible.
Yeah.
You don't do that to people. That's totally disrespecting a human being in general. So yeah, I didn't like that at all. What do we got next?
I agree
We
with that.
so
Dallas
we're
and
going
Vegas.
we're going possible. I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one, so I don't really know. Golden Knights and Stars. I'm going with the. I just love the way the Golden Knights are playing right now. The Stars are playing. They've only allowed more than one goal in 0 times in 7 and once in 10 or something like that. They're defensively, they're playing like unbelievable. But they are putting Holtby in tonight, and the Golden Knights are. This is going to be a fun game to watch. Let's say that
Hmm.
because the Golden Knights are playing really, 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 really well right now.
And then the Golden Knights are going with Leonard. Does it say who's going to be in net for Vegas?
I would think. You know what? They probably don't have that. That's a late game, so they probably don't have.
Yeah, it's a late game. They probably don't have. But um,
No, they don't have it.
for me,
They don't have it.
okay, for me, Holtby, like I kind of was saying earlier, the move, just like it didn't for Vancouver, didn't make structural sense. Like, why did you bring in Braden
Yeah.
Holtby? Yet the play on the ice this year has not been
No,
bad.
it's been
Where in
actually
Vancouver,
good. Yeah.
yeah, where in Vancouver he was not
No.
good. Where here he's actually been fine. Where it's just I prefer Jake Ottinger because I think he's one of the best young talents in the league in net. But Holtby, I don't think is going to take anything away from you. And this team's been one of the hottest in the league on a 7-game winning streak, 9-1 in their last 10. I would still have to lean Dallas in this one just with how Dallas has been playing, even with Braden Holtby in net, where Vegas has been good of late, but Vegas um has only been to a more just average pace 6-4 of late, where they've won their last two. They seem to be trending back into being the Vegas we all know, sitting at fourth, um, or sitting at where's Vegas at right now? Yeah, sitting at fifth. They're fifth in the division, so not fourth. San Jose's fourth now, so sitting at fifth, and then Dallas is also fifth in theirs. Dallas has just been the hotter team of late, that I would kind of lean towards them just with how hot they've been. They've been moving. They have that 7 game streak. Vegas has just kind of turned it back again after being just average in their last 10 to win the last two. I would go with Dallas, but I think it's going to be like you said. That's why TNT picked that game in the States. It's the game of the night. That's why they picked that as the game of their night. It's going to be a heck of a game that probably goes down to the wire. So I don't know. It's like a very 5 percentile move to Dallas, but I would just go with Dallas by a slight way, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to look at it. Okay, Dallas played Arizona. Okay, Arizona can't score. Columbus can score, but it's not that difficult team to stop them from scoring. Carolina was tired as heck when they played that game. Arizona again. Colorado is really the only one. And Edmonton, they kept Edmonton from scoring, which I've said all along it's not difficult to do. And when they played against a high possession team like Minnesota, they lost. So I don't know. This is going to be a type of team like Minnesota that they lost to, that can play keep the possession in their zone quite a bit. Um, but this is toss-up games the whole night pretty much, except for really it is the whole night. I'm not a big fan of really any of these games. The
Not for a heavy lean either way, no. Like we kind of said, slight lean. I went Colorado with Kemper being back. Philly, I didn't even give a mark on who I think was going to win. I said if the Flyers play at the pace they did on Monday, they would have a better chance of winning. And then with Colorado or with Vancouver and Boston, that's the one. Just with the Boudreaux thing, I led towards Vancouver, but I wouldn't give a hefty lean with that. And with Vegas and Dallas, it's a very close draw. Vegas is also at home. That's kind of like the Seattle Seahawks stadium of the NHL. You know, Vegas is always going to be loud as heck. So that makes a little bit of a difference. But I just slightly went with Dallas because yeah, they didn't look good against Minnesota, who's more of a possession team, but or not Colorado. Carolina is also a very good possession team, and they beat them 4-1 the end of November. So it depends what Dallas you get. They will lose. I agree with you. If they play the game like they played in that 7-2 loss to the Wild, there's no chance of beating the Vegas Golden Knights. But of late, with how Dallas is playing, I don't think they'll play that way. That's why I think it'll be a very good game that comes down to the wire.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not taking. I'm not going against Vegas too often from here on out. I like the way they're playing a lot.
I
So
don't like that either. Yeah, it's tough to pick against the even since their inception.
and they're home.
I've won money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've won money because of the Vegas Golden Knights and the books picking
Oh,
against them.
Carlson is
And
back tonight. Yeah, Carlson's back too. So they've got the full top six and everything there. It's going to be a barn burner game. I think they can outskate Dallas tonight. I think they'll win. I really do. I think that I'm gonna go Vegas. By the way,
that
Manscaped
is
guys, got to check that. Go over to that site, hit the link, boom. That's our sponsor, right? So, and also Projo has a. I should have got your link too. Projo has his own Sports Fanatic News with a PH. If you guys aren't subbed up to that, go get subbed up to Projo there. Sports Fanatic News. He does all the sports, everything, all sports. He's putting out content like crazy. I tried this. They got this shorts option for in YouTube now, where you can do like short little videos.
oh yeah, the little short videos.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you guys, if you, I don't know if how you guys watch the shorts. Does it just pop up or what? I don't know, but I know one thing. So far, nobody's watching it. I got I got
uh,
two views on one and three on the other. So those are really cool. I'm gonna be putting them out there, like talking about quick little things. Like right now, Montreal is, I think, gonna trade. I think they're gonna end up trading a lot of people.
yeah. And also, right now, Bill, real quick, I'm assuming your last comment you're talking about. Did San Jose? Where did the Sharks come from? They were
Oh yeah,
crap last year. All of a sudden, they're doing all right
change
this
of
year.
energy, man.
I Yeah, it's a change of energy. It's similar. They still have Bugner. They don't have the difference of the coach, but you had different guys come in that kind of just brought a different energy to that team this year. You also don't have,
Kane.
obviously, Kane. Yeah, Kane hasn't been in the locker room to be that deterrent, where he's working his way back now, and I wish him all the
Oh
best.
yeah,
But
I'm
that's
rooting
something
for him
that,
for sure, no doubt about it. Yeah.
yeah, that's something that has been talked about is a locker room thing where this team just seems to have had that different energy and that different spark from day one this year that they haven't had in the past. And also you have players like the Coutures of the world who haven't pulled their weight as much in past. You have guys that are kind of coming seeming like they're re-energized, where they haven't had that same jump in their step in the last couple years, whether it's from Couture to Meyer or somebody like that, where they're kind of getting that jump in their step again with the way that this team's put together and the way that people are coming together on the defense, like Middleton and Mario Ferraro have mixed in well. Now you have Maloche you're trying to mix in. Kuzanov got injured, unfortunately. He looked like a solid defenseman to keep trying to mix in there and good for the Barracuda. So I think they found the good finishing pieces of the puzzle guys. And then Bugner's just been able to push the right buttons. Plus, they also made a pretty good bottom six pickup when they were able to get, I think he was with Arizona, their fourth line center at times, Lane Peterson, who just plays. He's not a great overall player, but just plays with that energy and spunk that you want to see out of a bottom liner that kind of is just infectious through the rest of the team type
Yeah,
thing.
mine's simple, and actually Bugner pretty much said it himself, without saying it. He just said, just the energy of this team is the best it's ever been since I've been here. Kane apparently was a very miserable person, and read a few articles, two articles where the reporter basically said, one reporter said that when you walked in the room when Kane was there, it was like it felt like somebody died. That's amazing. And the other one said Kane sucked the life out of any room he was in. So the guy was a miserable dude, and it really affected that team a lot. You take that energy out, and I'm not saying this like I'm talking down or judging Kane. Gosh, how many times I'd be the last person to do that. I've had my miserable times in my life because of a lot of things. And if you got an addiction problem, life can get miserable for you pretty quick. You got bankruptcy. You know
Yeah.
how much a person can beat themselves up for. I'm making $7 million a year, and I had nothing. Like that's gonna make you feel pretty miserable, and I can't stop it. So thankfully, he
Well,
went and
I
got
think,
some help,
yeah.
and it sounds like, from everything I've heard, his attitude has already changed a lot, and I'm really rooting for him to come back and be the Kane that we all know he can be.
Well, it was all about getting the help for, like you said, the addiction issues. Because when the league investigated this far with any of the other claims, they came back to not finding merit in anything that his ex-wife has accused him of. Where with off the field gamble or off the rink gambling, once you solve that problem, it kind of will fix everything else. Because like you were saying, I with anxiety disorder and different things, I've had the same things in the past where I've got into really bad ruts where you can't get out of them by yourself. Where Kane, I think, felt like he could for a while, and now finally admitted he needed help from elsewhere, and that's how your personality changes. Because once you're able to come back to feeling your old self
Yeah.
again and feeling like you have control again, your old personality comes back, which was like the personality he had when he first started with the Thrashers, which was the energizer kid, the kid that had the skill and the energy, but and then didn't have all the extra fluff that you don't want
Yep.
to have. Where it seems like that personality starting to come back, which is what you want to see. At the same time, I don't think it'll probably be with the Sharks, like people have said. He probably will get moved out, but somebody will give him a shot if he keeps progressing at this pace and he's showing that he has his head
I
on
think it would
straight
be
again.
pretty cool if he goes down to the AHL and shows what I've seen a lot of people that come out of rehab look like totally different human beings. You wouldn't even know that they were what they were. Like who is that, right? It would be amazing for him to go back to San Jose, and he could be a poster boy for what it could be to take control and do something and do work on the changes inside of you that causes these addictions. I've seen it, like somebody said, having millions in the bank and being miserable. My dad owned a landscaping business. I worked with very wealthy people, and I wouldn't say more so than anyone else. I would say just as much as anyone else. There is the same ratio of miserable people in wealthy people as there are poor, because it has to do with an attitude or something that's gone on in your life or the way you look at the world, that money isn't going to help you that much. In fact, sometimes it can be a trap to make it worse. So I've seen
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty miserable wealthy people. Like blew my mind. It was an eye opener when I was 16, 17, 18 years old to see these people be absolutely miserable and wealthy at the same time. So,
Yeah, no, that's entirely true. And as for your question, Lauren, I have no idea because I've never been in their arena and or San Jose. So, from TV, maybe if you notice that I haven't paid attention while watching Sharks games to the differences of the arena. But yeah, they could have revamped their arena. I'm not entirely sure. I've never been in their arena. I
I
can't
think the
answer that
Sharks
one
are
for
playing
you.
the system that Bugner always wanted them to play. They just have confidence and energy now to do it. Bugner, I mean, in Florida, I don't even know why he got fired. He looked like he was doing fine to me. So I didn't. I think they're playing what they always thought they would play. It's nice to see Carlson look like he has some jump now. You know, so it's pretty cool. But I guess we got to get going. Eh? We went long here again. We seem to always do that when you're on because it's so much fun. But we will all be back on tomorrow from 3 to 5, and won't have hopefully plumbing things to take care of. It was an eye popper, boy. Score prediction for Flyers tonight.
That's a tough game, CL, because if we can come out and play the offense we played against the Avalanche, so you have a much better chance. But at the same time, with Dawson, Mercer, Hughes, and the offensive skill of the Devils, you can't play that same defense you played against the Avalanche either. Otherwise, it'll be a scoring fest again that you have to keep up with. I'll go with a middle score in between a scoring fest to a non-scoring fest, and I'll go with
It
four
feels like
three.
a
I'll
tie all
say,
day, doesn't it? Like
yeah.
it feels like two teams that are going to try to. I don't know. That's one of those games that could go any way because Yo really could. Like when he took over for St. Louis and Minnesota, both teams went on a run. So I could see Philadelphia doing that. He hasn't had jail. He just got
And they looked better in their
right.
first game. They checked some of the boxes. Like I said, they just didn't check all the boxes, obviously, which you don't expect in a
No,
coach's
got to give
first
him a
game.
little bit of time. Carter Hart's going to be in. He's had a pretty good year, but it's been tough behind that defense still. And yeah, I think I lean Philadelphia. I just think Yo, well, going by his track record, will have this team at least playing with enough energy to be able to surprise New Jersey. Uh, yeah, with those young kids, maybe take them a little lightly. I'm going to lean. I'm going to say 4-2.
Okay, yeah, you went 4-2. I went 4-3, a little bit closer. Swerve went 4-3. And then Bill said, "See you guys later. I'm excited for Flyers to win tonight." So Bill thinks the Flyers are going to win.
Yeah. Okay, guys. I'll talk to you later. I got to get going now. It was good times. Talk to you tomorrow. Remember, Projo. Go check out Projo, Sports Fanatic News, PH Fanatic, and all of his great stuff he's got over there. You also, don't you have a show going on now with Steele that you do?
Yeah, the JB and Steele show where we talked about the Canadians GM search, the firing of Benning and Green, and the hiring of Boudreau, and also the Flyers firings, plus different NFL news and MLB lockout stuff that's posted on Steel Flyers. And I'm going to post the Roll Skype edition once it converts well, probably tonight around like 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern. I'll post that on my channel, and that'll be up there. But you can check it out with all the bells and whistles, like the Manscaped ad and everything on Steele's channel as well over there. So thank you for letting me join in, and a special thanks to Bill, CL, Swerve, Danny, and everybody else that joined the chat. We really appreciate all y'all's support, and continue to subscribe and hit the like buttons for Pearlo, that's for sure. Continue to come in here and follow this great hockey show that he does
Excellent.
every day.
Take care, my friend. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Okay. Bye.